You couldn't ask for anything more last night. That was an A+ in every possible way by Major League Baseball, by Fox. The way that they put on that broadcast was spectacular. The pregame was amazing. Reggie Jackson will get into his story. That was unbelievably powerful before the game last night. The way that they honored Willie Mays during the game and before the game, having all of the former black superstars from Major League Baseball in the arena, in the stadium for the game. The Negro League players, the living Negro League players walking out while John Batiste is playing before the game. You couldn't have asked for anything better. And then we talked about this during the Field of Dreams game as well a couple of years ago. The actual game itself kind of lent itself to, wow, what a cool event. Because it was a good baseball game last night that suddenly took place on the field. So I'm curious from you guys. Text line 314-399-9646, and the YouTube chat is off and running as well at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. What'd you think of the event that took place last night at Rickwood Field, Cardinals versus the Giants? By the way, that audio courtesy of Fox.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Typically around the first pitch is when I got dinner going with my girls, and at that time Disney movies are blasting through our household, and so this was one of those times that I'm usually on my phone watching it while the girls are watching their movie, but this was the time that I'm like, no, you know what, I'm going to turn this on, because even though my girls are 3 and 2 years old, it's still kind of cool, because this is history, and I am a history nerd, and I was tied down to it, because I was watching everything with the opening ceremonies, and they were good. I still feel like the Field of Dreams games was a bigger open with just my attachment to it and being hooked on it. But from the moment first pitch took place, I could not stop listening. I mean, it was just the stories that were coming out from all of the guests that were coming on, and they were just telling about their time, whether it was the Negro Leagues or getting into Major League Baseball and some of the guys that they played with. I thought that element to the broadcast, and I know John Smoltz told us that to me was the best part, because it's one thing to see those guys, and that captures you immediately, because it's like, man, look at all of these guys that didn't have the chance to play Major League Baseball and then got in. But then the stories mean more to me, because when I can hear them tell their story of what took place, how they got there, what they went through, that was the part that I thought was the most engulfing with that broadcast. So that was a job well done, because for me, I always tune out throughout the broadcast, just in and out, doing different things. That was one that I didn't stop from start to finish.
Yeah, I thought it was A+ put on both by Fox and by Major League Baseball last night. The opening ceremony stuff was fantastic. The way that they were able to do that, the performance before, having the Negro players out there, 99-year-old Negro player throws out the first pitch, which was awesome to see. Then the game itself is fun, but then what Fox is able to do with having different people tell different stories. Bob Kendrick on, not for just a half inning, but for like 2-3 innings to tell some stories of Negro League players, which was really cool and fun to hear those stories. And then even like the smaller details that were there at the ballpark as well. The old kind of logos on the wall for all the sponsors across, where you had like the Play Ball initiative, but it was like kids from like the 1940s, the Chevy logo 1940 style, Build Submarine, same thing. The jerseys, we talked about that a little bit yesterday. A nice little throwback to that as well. And I loved Fox doing the half inning in the black and white.
Amazing.
I thought it was awesome. Now, at first when they started to do it, I was like, okay, is this just kind of like a quick little thing, and then are we going to be done with it? But they did a full half inning of it. I thought that was awesome to just feel like what it was like to watch baseball from like the 1940s, 1950s. I thought it was an A+ all the way around for Major League Baseball and Fox.
I don't think you could have asked for anything more from the game. And I'm really glad that we got the Reggie Jackson raw speech pregame, raw memory pregame, not even a speech. And we'll play that in its entirety coming up in the 12 o'clock hour today. I think it's worth revisiting, because that's what yesterday was all about. The game itself, the event, like all of that, it felt big, it felt important, it felt happy at times, and not everything about what took place yesterday was supposed to remember the happiness of what took place with baseball in the South while the Negro Leagues were taking place. That place was historic because black players were not allowed to play in Major League Baseball. That was the history of that specific venue. And so I think that needs to be remembered. You can't just remember, hey, look, we're celebrating the Negro Leagues. Yeah, it's also 2024, man. And it's been 100 years since the vast majority of those players played in that arena. And they were not allowed to play with their white counterparts at the time. And that went up until, not 100 years ago. So I think it was a necessary thing for baseball to remember all of the aspects of what yesterday meant. And I'm glad Reggie Jackson tore off the Band-Aid and brought out the true memories of what it meant to play baseball in Alabama during his tenure there. By the way, he remembered that Dave Duncan was one of the guys that helped him during that time. And I thought that was one hell of a shout out for Dave Duncan to be a part of that. That being said, Alex, it was a big event. It was awesome. I'm so glad that the Cardinals were a part of this one. I thought it was amazing for them to be part of that. And I think the players, dude, like, if you're Brendan Donovan, if you're Mason Wynn, you had a big game yesterday. Dude, can you imagine a better opening debut for Adam Kloffenstein?
Yeah.
Holy crap, dude.
Well,
Eighth inning of a one-run game at that venue, that day, and it's your debut for Major League Baseball with your family in attendance. You can't get better than that.
And Victor Scott getting in, too. That one for me, I thought that was a really cool move by Ollie to get him in center field.
And it made sense, like, baseball-wise, to get your better defender out there, but also...
That's cool for him to have that.
How can you not be romantic about that, right? So... all of that was really cool, and they're going to remember that, and they're going to tell their grandkids about it that specific day. So it's cool that the Cardinals were a part of it. What's next for Major League Baseball? This is always the question that we ask. They did the Field of Dreams. We're like, do you just keep going back to Field of Dreams every year? The answer is no, because eventually it loses its luster. Look at the Winter Classic and the Stadium Series and all that. Like, still cool, not what it was.
No, yeah, you're right.
The reason that yesterday felt big is because it was new. It felt different than anything else that you see during the regular season. Do you think baseball has a next thing? Is it just more of the international series? Can they do stuff like this domestically? We've seen it with the Field of Dreams. We saw it with Williamsport. Now you see it at Rickwood Field. What do you think is next?
I don't know how you... I don't think you can one-up this. I mean, because this is the history of Major League Baseball, and it's hard to one-up something like that. Now, you can do things to probably find ways to get fans engaged, whether it is going somewhere else, like the overseas games, things like that. TBone brought up the Sandlot in the office, which I really think that's something you try and pounce on, but how do you go about that? Because there was no special field with it. This was one of those, This is like when I gave an engagement ring to my wife on her birthday. How do you one-up that birthday present? I don't know if you can one-up Rickwood Field game and all of the history that went with it. But you do need to find a way to continue to pounce on this if you're Major League Baseball, because this is a month that I think baseball fans now expect something exciting. Yeah. Because you've done the Field of Dreams, you've done the Williamsport, now you've got Rickwood Field. It's going to come down to June when the season gets boring. Baseball fans are going to expect something. So you're going to have to find a way to do something with it.
Yeah, I don't think you go back to Rickwood, but maybe every 5-10 years. That way it isn't just repetitive. They did that with Field of Dreams game where they went back to next year and it was just kind of, okay, yeah, it's cool. There's corn. I don't know if we need to do it again. So I don't think you do that with Rickwood Field. I think you make it more of a every 5-10 year kind of celebration. I think you try to look for things like how do you kind of have a kind of Sandlot themed baseball game somewhere where you could play it. Think of things for America's national pastime. Could you try and find a way to play a baseball game near Mount Rushmore, for example? Those are the
Mount Rushmore.
Those are the kind of things that baseball's going to have to find a way to do for these June games, because you're right, they're going to want to break up the monotony, but I don't think you can just break up the monotony of the season by going overseas all the time. They got the London series. I think they're in talks to do a game in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. That's cool, but I think you also need one in the homeland as well to really break things up.
Somebody on the text line or on the YouTube chat, Willie says, why does this have to be one up? Just let it be special for what it is or was. Agreed. I'm not saying they need to one up what they just did. I just think they need to continue to do these really cool events. It doesn't have to be better than. They don't have to all be compared to one another. It can just be, hey, in 2024, they did something at Rickwood Field. In 2022, was it? They did the Field of Dreams. They have done Williamsport. They've done a bunch of different now domestic events here in the States. And I think that Amsinger said earlier today on the morning show, he thinks eventually they will get to a place where it's just 5 or 10 different venues that they have on a rotation. Kind of like how the college football playoff, right? They have the different bowls that are a part of it or have been in the past before they expanded it. And they do it on a rotation basis as to who gets that year's college football playoff. That's kind of something that they could do in Major League Baseball, where on a 10-year rotating basis, hey, in 2034, baseball will be going back to Rickwood. That's the kind of thing that I think they could do. I don't know what those 10 things are, but I do think that that's something that Major League Baseball should and probably is already looking into, is what the other places are they could go to. Somebody brought up Omaha. That could be interesting.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it right now because this is when the College World Series is taking place, but that could be a cool spot for Major League Baseball to do something with. That'd probably have to be like a mid-July type of a game. But that's another place that would make a lot of sense for Major League Baseball to go to. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Certainly plenty more thoughts on the Rickwood Field game as we go along today. We'll play if you missed it, the Reggie Jackson pregame moment. We'll play that in its entirety coming up in the 12 o'clock hour. We always want you guys to be involved at 314-399-9646. Ask us anything coming up later on this hour. But coming up next, Brendan Donovan was the story for the Cardinals last night. He's really been the story of the Cardinals offense over the last 6 weeks or so. We'll tell you about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Here's a high drive to deep right field, and Brendan Donovan, an Alabama native, crushes a home run. He is the first Alabama player to play in an American League, National League, Major League game here at Rickwood Field. And how about him going deep?
That is what it sounded like on Fox last night as the Alabama native Brendan Donovan put on a display last night, had a home run, had a double, had a single, ended up a triple away from the cycle. With Alex and TBone, I'm BK. Alex, Brendan Donovan is heating up right now. Over his last 150 at-bats, he's batting .295, getting on base 35% of the time, and has an OPS of right around 800. He's on pace, based on these numbers, to have 40 doubles over the course of the season. Now, I know our friend Josh Innes, who was on at 10 o'clock today, said, you can't do endpoints. Just tell me about what they've done all season long, BK. Don't tell me about endpoints. Okay, well, in baseball, endpoints are important. And for Brendan Donovan, if you go based on this stretch time, he looks like himself again. He's hitting for average. He's getting on base at a really high clip. And just like last year before he got hurt, he is showing some increased power potential. He is the type of guy that can hit 15-ish home runs over the course of a regular season. Alex, if you look at what he's done so far now, he's an above league average hitter. He's at a 107 OPS plus. There's no endpoints on that. That's just what he's done for the entirety of the season because Major League Baseball stinks and there's no offense across the league. So a 730 OPS, that's above league average. Alex, the Cardinals need Brendan Donovan to be this kind of a hitter for them to reach their potential as an offense. I think a big part of why their offense stunk early on this season, and it hasn't been great even lately because they have a lot of guys that are missing, and Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt aren't good. But another piece of that was Brendan Donovan not being the player they expected him to be. He can't go through slumps the way that he did early on this year. He's got to be that on-base machine.
Yeah, and it feels like there's a few guys that we keep coming back to and saying, like, you can't go through that type of slump beyond the Goldschmidt and Arenado. And look, Brendan Donovan has put himself in this position where he has to be one of the consistent threats for this team because of the uncertainty of Goldschmidt and Arenado. And it should be of no surprise to anybody because last year, Brendan Donovan was this up until he got injured. And I know the season went haywire all year last year, but Brendan Donovan was one of the consistent threats for the team. And then when he went down, that's when that season went even further into the toilet than what it already was. So Brendan Donovan has put himself in a position. I don't know if you're still on that same level, in my opinion, as Mason Wynn is, but Brendan Donovan is obviously showing the importance to this Cardinals team because of his ability to get on base, because of the impact where he hits in the lineup. And honestly, if he's going to showcase this power, not just with the home runs, but with the ability to hit some doubles, that's where Brendan Donovan can put himself away from the pack in terms of all of these guys that seem to be doing the same thing.
Yeah, typically when we talk about Brendan Donovan, we talk about his on base because I think he has the best batter's eye at the plate. I think Mason Wynn's probably got the best bat control up at the plate right there with Alec Burleson. But because you have Wynn hitting so well and Burley, who hit or at least makes contact, doesn't whiff that often, you have to hit Donovan lower in the order now, where he's hitting like 6th currently, and he's providing some slug for you. I just look because I was curious because all of this talk about his home runs and his doubles lately. He's 4th among active Cardinals right now with slugging percentage on the team.
It's not good because his slugging percentage is 400.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great, but it's starting to climb back up, and he's starting to look like the guy that we've talked about could have 15 to 20 home run power in his bat. And I think if he's going to be hitting lower in the order, especially while you look at the bottom of the order is currently like Crawford, Pages, and Ciani, he's got to hit a little bit of slug, and he's starting to do that as well, starting to double, starting to hit for some power. And when he's hitting in that 6th spot, that's the kind of Brendan Donovan that you need. The on-base isn't as valuable with the bottom part of that order. He's got to hit for a little bit of slug, and he's starting to do that of late.
Yeah, you're starting to see like pieces of what the offense was supposed to be this year. It's not all the way there by any stretch, but Mason Wynn is the guy that you could have. This is the best possible version of Mason Wynn compared to what we could have expected realistically coming into the season. I think Alec Burleson has basically been the guy that you were hoping that he would be this year. Now, he hasn't been the same lately that he was there for a hot stretch, but he's been pretty good this year. Wilson Contreras was amazing prior to his injury, and he seems to be closer than expected. I would bet you at some point next week we'll see Wilson Contreras back in the Cardinals starting lineup, which is amazing.
Monday probably would be my guess.
Potentially. So he's probably going to be your 3-hole hitter. Nootbaar sounds like he's closer than maybe we expected him to be. I bet you either right before or right after the All-Star break we'll probably see him. Goldie, he's not what we wanted by any stretch, but Can he be above league average and be like a solid 5-hole hitter for you eventually? Maybe he could be that. Donovan's been good. Now you're talking about a top 6 that, okay, like you can compete with that. And yes, that means that Nolan Arenado is probably going to have to either produce or be a 7-hole hitter for you eventually. Because those dudes that I just mentioned are better than Nolan Arenado right now as hitters. And if you add in Nolan Gorman, you could make a pretty strong case that when this team is healthy, Nolan Arenado should be batting 8th. Like, that's how he has produced so far on the season. And if this team's going to reach its full potential, they need their best hitters to get the most at-bats possible. So the offense is not great, but they have enough pieces that are starting to show signs of life that I can see how it starts to come together as they get healthy. Alex, I thought it was interesting. TBone said something before the show today about the Cardinals creating slugging percentage and manufacturing it via base stealing, via athleticism, via on base. T-Bone, you read something earlier today on The Athletic, and it told you that Mason Wynn should be their long-term answer at leadoff instead of Brendan Donovan, even though Donovan is starting to get on base again. Why is that?
So there was nice pieces in The Athletic today by Jason Stark and our friend of the show, Eno Saris, about offense and why it is down. And the number one thing that is down is doubles. Doubles are really down this year. We are currently on pace for 600 fewer doubles this season than last year.
My God, man.
Yeah, it's not just home runs.
It's 600.
Yeah, it's not just
That's
home
not
runs.
an insignificant amount.
No, it's also doubles, which is what can help propel a guy for their slugging percentage.
Wow.
So when I read that, my first thought immediately was, man, if that is what baseball is going to be this year, where it is just a year from hell for offense and my slug baby slug looks putrid, I think you have to manufacture slug. And BK's talked about this a lot, where that's where the value for Tommy Edman was when he was, hitting 260, getting on base at decent clip, but he steals 30 back. So he manufactures some slugging by getting to second base without needing help. Well, when I look at Brendan Donovan, I think he's got the best eye on the team, can draw a walk, and can get on base, but he's not a base stealer. So that makes me, with the way that offense is working this season and how it is down across the board, makes me think, okay, who is the guy that can hit in that leadoff spot that I trust to get on base and can steal second base with whether it be a walk or a single?
Mason Wynn.
It's Mason Wynn currently.
Yep.
And it could become, I don't know if I would hit him leadoff, it could become Tommy Edman against lefties. To where he can get on base and steal 30. He wouldn't get to 30 stolen bases this year, but he'll project towards being that if you pace out his per
I think
162.
Lars could be one of them, too.
I was wondering about that, yeah.
Newpark could potentially be that is like the 2-hole, because Burley's not a guy that's going to steal bases
That's
for
what
you.
I was thinking at the top of your order. You're talking about Mason Wynn and Lars Nootbaar, and then you've got the guys that come away with just contact and getting on base with Brendan Donovan, Wilson Contreras, Alec Burleson, and then you got the pop that's Nolan Gorman.
And as we know, the Cardinals can single a team to death, as I've heard once before.
That's their celebration line.
If you're manufacturing slug, so if Wynn, let's say, gets a single, steals second base, that's essentially a double.
Yep.
Now a single can score Mason Wynn. Same if Tommy Edman's out there at second base. A single can now score Tommy Edman. I think we're now at the point, especially with 600 fewer doubles on pace for this year, to where it may become more of, can you manufacture slugging? Not so much slug baby slug, but single, steal second base, and create manufactured slug.
If I'm Ollie, that's how I'm focusing on my lineup. But the caveat with that is when I'm healthy. Because right now, I don't think you can do that because the outs are so critical, because you don't have the ability to get hits with anybody in this lineup right now, with the exception of 3 guys.
I almost think it makes it more important, though.
But
because
the only
you have
guys that
such a lack of slugging percentage right now that the way to score those guys is with a single with them on second.
But you only have one guy that does it, and it's Mason Wynn. And that's it. And now you're talking about, like, nobody else in that lineup, I guess, with the exception of Michael Ciani, but that's the 9-hole we're talking about. You don't have, why I think it's more critical when you're healthy is because now you'll have Nootbaar, Mason Wynn. Those 2 guys can create and manufacture that slug. And now you have your big boppers that you're not relying solely on Goldie and Arenado. Because if you're just doing it now, that means Mason Wynn's on second. Maybe your 2-hole hitter gets a hit. But if he doesn't, now you're screwed because you've got Goldie and Arenado coming up in the 3-4 or the 3-5 spot.
Yeah, no, fair. But it's also like we know Goldie and Arenado are hitting for more average than they are power right now. And so if I'm going to have them drive in a run, they are much more likely to do so with my dude on second base than with him on first, right? It takes multiple hits to score a runner from first base right now. And the Cardinals, it's really hard to string together hits with the current state of Major League Baseball offense. So, man, those outs are worth less than they once were, would be the way that I would put it. Like, stealing the base is more valuable than it has been in 40 years, probably, because of the premium that is put on getting that guy to second. Because if it's harder to hit for extra bases than it has been in the last 35 years, then it makes sense that it would be more important to get that guy in scoring position where he can, especially if he's got speed the way that Mason Wynn does, he can score from second base on a hard hit single. So that is something that I would be very curious to see if the Cardinals start to implement more and more with their game plans. I do think we've seen it a little bit. I think they have been more aggressive on the bases over the last couple of weeks than they were early on in the season.
Look at Crawford at second last night.
Yikes. I wonder if that is an adjustment that they're making game planning wise to what we're seeing league wide with offenses. Certainly what we have seen from their offense so far this year.
And to your point on putting that premium on, like how hard it is to score because of hits, well, listen to these numbers because this is fun as well. We are currently on pace for 1,400 fewer hits than there were last year. We are currently on pace We are currently on pace for 1,300 fewer runs than we were last year. And currently, lineups are averaging 8.1 hits per game. And just to give you an idea of like how many times it's happened 5 times in the modern era. Four of those times,
1968, I would guess.
One of them was 68. Yeah. The other 4 times, 1906, 1907, 1908, 1909. Yeah. So scoring is 5 times harder now, and just getting on base is hard.
That was fun for you?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting.
Rickwood opened, I believe, in 1920. It's over 100 years old. Those years that T-Bone just mentioned were around the baseball, the style of baseball that we are watching right now in terms of the number of hits per game is reminiscent of the baseball that was played prior to Rickwood Field in 1968 when they decided afterwards to lower the mound. Those are the 2 eras of Major League Baseball that most represent what we're watching today when it comes to the offensive environment across the sport. It's unlike anything that most of us that are living right now have ever seen. That's not a good
We're back to talking about dots again, aren't we?
Yeah, sure.
Dots is back in the convo.
Dots was 1919.
Oh my God. They may not have been around yet.
Dots wasn't even alive then.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, Alex thinks that the Blues are very well situated to potentially have an offer sheet to other players across the NHL this offseason. Who should they be targeting in that regard? And are they actually going to do it this time? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Tara Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Cardinals were able to beat the Giants yesterday 6-5 at the Rickwood Field game. They are off today before getting back in action tomorrow when they resume their three-game set here at home against the San Francisco Giants. 1:15 will be first pitch. Jordan Hicks will get the start for San Francisco. Miles Michaelis will be on the mound for St. Louis. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
With Alex and TBone, I'm VK. So, Alex, the Blues might be interested in handing out an offer sheet this offseason. I've heard this before, dude.
Yeah.
It feels like every offseason.
Actually, you haven't, though.
General managers across the NHL say, an offer sheet might be something that we would consider. And then it never happens. There's been one player that has been offer sheeted and accepted it and ended up going elsewhere in like the last 15 years in the NHL. It's exceptionally rare because it requires a very specific set of circumstances. It requires a team that has the draft capital to make it happen, has the cap space to make it happen, and also is not expecting to be a significant player in free agency to make it happen. And if you have all of those things, okay, now you are in a place where you can give out an offer sheet. Now you need the player on the other side to accept your offer sheet and to want to leave his team and come to yours. Well, that actually may exist. All of those things for the St. Louis Blues this offseason. They're not expected to be players in free agency. They do have a good amount of cap space. They have an extra second and third round pick this year, which could make up for their lack of draft picks that they have next year if they decide to offer sheet a player. And there are some really good RFAs out there on teams that are hurting for cap space. And so they may be put into a difficult situation where normally they would match whatever offer the Blues would give. And this year they might not be able to. So, Alex, as you look at the RFAs that are available across the NHL, do you think this is something the Blues could actually consider in 2024?
I think you definitely have to consider this for 2024. This is the year that I believe you're in a turning point of trying to get out of this retool, and it's rare that this many RFAs are available with this high level of talent with teams that don't have a lot of cap space, which is why it might be the opportunity for you to pounce if you're Doug Armstrong. And look, I want to read a quote that Shayna had in her article today up on The Athletic talking about the RFA and the offer sheets. And she said, after all, the NHL general managers aren't in the business to make friends. They should be ruthlessly trying to contend, even if it ruffles some feathers. And this is the year to ruffle feathers if you want one of these top-level RFAs. So this, to me, is part one of your successful offseason if you can pull it off. And it's finding a centerman to be in your top six that's in the same core of your roster by just doing an offer sheet. And it's essentially draft pick compensation. And for those that don't know, the compensation is if you're paying a player between $6.4 and $8.5 million AAV, it's a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick, and I believe all in 2025. Yep. So the Blues would be forfeiting their first 3 rounds if they went down this path.
Of next year.
But Anton Liddell from the Florida Panthers, Baby Barkov is what he's been called, is 22 years old right now as an RFA. Martin Necas, who we have talked a lot about, is an RFA who's 25 years old. Quentin Byfield from the LA Kings, they're in cap hell. They just had to trade away Pierre-Luc Dubois so that they can open up more cap space. He's like 22 years old. And then you've got a defenseman who, I don't know if you really want to deal with that because I don't know if you can make it work, but Thomas Harley from the Dallas Stars.
I would if he was open to it, that would be the guy that I would target, but I just don't. Yeah. It doesn't make sense for either side. The Stars are going to do everything they can to make sure they retain.
But here's why the 3 centermen are the way you go. Now, I think Florida, you're still not going to get that because Florida knows they have to lock him up. I think that's why they're going to trade Sam Bennett because they want to give Lindell the money. But let's just target Martin Necas and Quentin Byfield right here. Because 2 teams that you go in there and offer $6 million AAV for, let's say, 6 years, those teams aren't going to be willing to match that. And they're going to look at it and say, well, at least we're going to get picks back in return for this one. And for the Blues, this is the best case scenario because you're bringing in a top 6 player that is in the core of your group of players with Thomas, with Kyrou, with Neighbors, with Dvorsky, Snuggerud, all these guys. You're bringing in someone between 22 and 25 years old for a 6 to 7 year contract. And if the deal doesn't work out with Booch becomes the opportunity to trade elsewhere to upgrade the defense or to get more picks.
So that's the thing that I find to be really interesting. If you decide to go the route of signing an offer sheet with, let's call it Martin Necas. He's the guy that we've been talking about, hey, could you trade Pavel Buchnevich for Martin Necas? Maybe. It sounds like there's new reports that are coming out. Carolina would like to get a roster player, somebody that is currently a good NHL player, in return for Martin Necas. So Pavel Buchnevich might end up being the best player that is offered to them in return for Necas. But maybe the Blues look at this a little differently, and they say, well, yeah, we could do that, but we could also flip Pavel Buchnevich elsewhere, either for picks or players. Prospects could be possible in there as well. And we could offer sheet Martin Necas. So we end up giving up our first, second, and third round picks for Necas via the offer sheet. And we go out there and trade Booch elsewhere. So it becomes two separate moves, but they could maximize the return on Booch while also ending up getting the services of Martin Necas for picks in that kind of a trade. The Booch aspect of that is something that I find really interesting, Alex, because you're essentially replacing his cap hit, the $5.8 million, with Martin Necas for a much younger and more cost-controlled player long-term, and a player that you potentially could put into the exact same spot in your lineup, and you're still getting a return elsewhere for Booch, which helps you with the picks that you're giving up for Necas. So it's a really interesting spot to be in as the Blues. Somebody from the 980 said, okay, guys, tell us something we don't know. Of course the Blues will consider all their options, but that's not the question. The question is, will they do it?
I think
that's
they
what
should.
we don't know. And I don't know if they will. I think this is the off season in which they could and potentially even should, because the players exist that are in the timeline that they're talking about. The Blues have the money to do it. They have the assets to do it. They have the outgoing president of hockey operations that doesn't have to worry about the ramifications 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road if they go do such a cold-blooded thing. I think this is the offseason, Alex, where they should absolutely prioritize one of these RFAs. The UFA market stinks. There are a ton of really good players in this RFA status.
Yeah, so for people that don't know, the free agency begins on July 1st. So qualifying offers to RFA, so basically the restricted free agents, qualifying offers from their team are due by June 30th, the day after the draft. So like if you don't see qualifying offers sent to these players, that's typically when you start to see offer sheets come in, that first day of July 1st to try and get those players. I'll throw another one out there. Shane Pinto with the Ottawa Senators, 23 years old centerman who's got top line center upside. Like, this is the time to do it, and it's not a matter of sure they're going to explore it. I think the Blues should pursue this because you've got teams that are going to get in a position that won't be able to pay that player the money. And I know a lot of people listening are probably thinking, well, yeah, but then they're going to do it to you with Jake Neighbors or somebody down the road. Yeah, but you'll be in a position where you have salary to work with, unlike these other teams that don't have salary to work with.
And honestly, that's the cost of doing business.
Well, yes, of course it is.
If you want a really good player, this is the way you got to do it. It's cold-blooded, and it's tough, and it's
This is how you build winners, though.
But, man, if it ends up with you getting a really good player, I'll deal with the ramifications down the road. I'll figure that out. And if that means it becomes a little more expensive to retain Jake Neighbors' services, I hope we have to deal with that. Because that means that Jake Neighbors is so good, another team values him the way that the Blues are currently valuing, Anton Lundell or Martin Necas. I want to have that problem.
And that's why I was going to say,
for the Blues,
teams don't typically throw that money out because if the team, the team that owns the players' rights, if they don't want to match it, then they're going to get stuck with a massive contract that they don't want. So it really is a win-win, and that's why I do find it so interesting with the Buchnevich front, because we talk so much about money in, money out. I think if you could go to Martin Necas and offer 6x6, Carolina can't do that. And that's money in, money out for the same price of a younger player. And then Pavel Buchnevich becomes the piece that could get you a Jacob Chikrin or a first-round draft pick for 2025 and a prospect. It's something that I think the Blues absolutely should do, because now you can kill two birds with one stone this offseason, fix the depth at center, but also have a weapon, a massive weapon to use at the draft that could upgrade you defensively.
So something that I will find really interesting as well is what this means for like a team like the Florida Panthers, right? if they end up having another team offer sheet Anton Lundell, it ties up that money.
Absolutely.
Where they can't use it in free agency. So they quickly have to make a decision on, are we matching this or not?
Because they have to get Reinhart signed to like $11 million.
And he's a day one type of a guy. Like, he gets signed immediately upon free agency opening. And, oh, by the way, that is 10 days from now.
Yep.
Like, we are right around the corner from free agency because this Stanley Cup final has gone a little bit longer than a lot of people were anticipating, including the Florida Panthers. Martin Necas, he has been able to, think about what his future has been holding for the last few weeks. I would imagine he's got a lot of ideas on what's going to be out there on the market. Certainly his agent probably does as well. If you could target one of these guys, Alex, you are in Army's shoes and you are thinking about, okay, what does the contract look like? What is the likelihood of the team matching the offer that I'm willing to give to them? Thinking about how they fit into the Blues both now and long term. Who is the guy that you're targeting via offer sheet this offseason?
Mine would be Shane Pinto. And I think a lot of people would say Martin Necas, but here's why I would go Pinto. 23 years old, 6'3", 201 pounds. And a lot of people know that name because he got hit with the gambling thing with the Ottawa Senators and missed half the season. But when he returned, he had 9 goals, 27 points in 41 games. 23 years old. You're talking about the exact same time frame as Neighbors, as Dvorsky, as Snuggerud, and Ottawa has $12 million in cap space right now, and they've got to lock up like 3 or 4 more players. I would go to the Shane Pinto and be because it was rumored, I think by Bruce Gerich, who covers the Ottawa Senators, it was rumored that Ottawa wants to do a bridge contract with him because they don't have the money right now to pay the long-term contract. I would go to it. Now, it's a gamble, but I'd go 7x7. And I'd look at it and I'd say, you're going to be 30 years old at the end of this contract, but here's our number 2 centerman. And Dvorsky develops as a winger for me, and my top 6 is set. That would be the number 1 I would go to. And if that one's too rich for people's blood, go to Martin Necas. 6x6. Carolina's not matching that, and you've got a dude who's 31 years old at the end of his contract.
So here's another question as a follow-up. Can you do this plus something else this offseason? Like, can you add one of these types of plays? Because you're talking about adding a significant salary. Can you add a Martin Necas, a Shane Pinto, and extend Pavel Buchnevich?
No.
Or go out and trade for a guy like who we talked about yesterday, apparently is now back on the open market trade-wise, is Ross Colton, or trade for a defenseman? Can you do multiple big moves this offseason, or is this your move? And now you go into next year, this is a significant piece that you're adding to the retool, and the next offseason you keep adding to the core.
I mean, the short answer is it really depends. Are you able to move out Torey Krug's money? Are you able to move out Kevin Hayes' money? Because that opens up more doors. Are you able to move out Brandon Saad if you decide to do that? I think if you make that move, you're not re-signing Pavel Buchnevich because you found the replacement for Buch, a younger player that fits into your top 6 that's a centerman. Buch isn't a centerman for you. I think Buch can be the other move to where you can acquire a defenseman like, I'm just hypothetically, go get Jacob Chikrin because you're saving $1 million on that front, and you make that move. You've got $14 million to work with right now, and I believe all of your RFAs are locked up with the exception of Nikita Alexandrov.
And that'll be $1 million.
Yeah. So if I'm bringing in 6 and I'm moving on from Buch, who's 5.8, I essentially have $14 million to work with still. Now, if I bring a player in for Buch, now you're talking about maybe less than that. And frankly, I think after you make this offer sheet, you don't need to make another move unless you're shipping guys out to fix your defense. But you can't move. You're not going to bring a defenseman in until you're moving somebody out.
That's where I'm at as well. I think it all depends on, okay, can you do Buch plus Martin Necas or one of these other guys? I think the answer is no. I think you have to choose one versus the other because of what it means for you in the long term. Because Buch is probably going to get $7-8 million. So you're going to have $8 million to Kyrou, $8 million to Thomas, $8 million, let's say, to Pavel Buchnevich, plus $6 million plus-ish for a guy like Martin Necas or whoever, Shane Pinto, for example. And I'm going to have $6.5 million for Braden Shen, and $6.5 million for Justin Falk, and $6.5 million for Colton Parayko, and $6 million for Jordan Bennington. I just don't think that's tenable.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something you can have all of those guys on your books for $6+ million over the next few seasons. I think you eventually have to make a choice.
Yeah.
So this really comes down to what's the plan with Pavel Buchnevich, and then you can decide on the offer sheet. I think the offer sheet would then take precedent over Pavel Buchnevich, and that would be making the decision is we're trading Buch. We're trading, maybe you trade Booch for picks. Maybe you trade Booch for a young player that can help you on the blue line. Maybe that's the way
Maybe you trade
upgrade
Booch
it.
for the 10th overall pick from the New Jersey Devils, and you draft a defenseman that's going to be there in 2 years.
Maybe you trade Booch for future assets in the draft that end up making up for your lack of assets next year in the draft. They've got a bunch of different ways they could go, but I think my priority this offseason, after seeing some of the players that are available via RFA and thinking about where the Blues are at in their life cycle as an organization, I think the number one thing I would be looking at this offseason is how do I get one of these RFAs to sign an offer sheet that can come over to St. Louis and help us down the middle for years to come. Whether that's Byfield, whether that's Natchez, whether that is Pinto, there's a few others that are out there. Those are the guys that I would be looking at. I don't think there's a defenseman that makes sense for both sides. I think it's a center going into this offseason. For Alex and TBone, I'm BK. Ask us anything. 314-399-9646 coming up next here on 101 ESPN. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, go ahead and get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. From the 618, Alex, do you guys think that couch pillows are a necessity? My wife has like 12 of them, and they're always on the floor because it's a damn couch and not a pillow holder. What are your thoughts on this? Wow. I love couch pillows.
My wife has them, and they're for decor. My girls throw them on the ground all the time, but I use them when I sleep on the couch.
Same.
So I like them.
I like a good nap.
Throw pillow
My
guy.
wife is incredible in terms of like interior design. She just knows what works, and so I never question her when she wants to do
so
something.
bad at it.
Same.
Kara has a question on, hey, what do you think, this or this? And
You
she'll
always
be like,
pick
hey,
the wrong one.
No, I just say I don't care.
Yeah, I do the food. She does the interior design.
And then I say, let me rephrase that. It's not that I don't care. It's that I'm not good at this, and I think
See?
that you would have a better idea.
How do
See,
you
that's
work
a
on
good
your
answer.
tone issues with your wife, but not us? We are
Yeah,
your
so
work
You know
husbands.
I work on it.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
You've
You
gotten
say
wo-
you will, and then you do it the next day.
You've gotten worse since we got rid of the squirt bottle. And I don't even know where that is anymore.
Yeah, somebody
somebody threw it away.
BK took it home with him.
Unbelievable. I thought you were going to say, I always give an answer, and then my wife always goes, no, what about the other one? That's what I thought you were going to say.
This one.
Yeah. No, you meant this one on my left.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. From the 636, guys, what is your favorite thing to pass the time besides sports and watching sports?
Nap.
I don't do those anymore. I mean, golf is something I really enjoy, but like that's a hobby. I don't know, like they're passing the time.
That's fair, though.
I don't do stuff to pass the time.
Yeah, once you have kids, that
You
becomes
don't-
something
yeah.
that, like,
My
I'm not
kids.
passing the time. I'm trying to buy more time.
Yeah, like last night, like I get home at 2:30 and my wife has to go to work at her salon at that point, and so I'm with the girls until they go to bed. There's no passing time away. It's like, how can I keep these girls
Yes.
entertained and not bored until dinner time?
Correct.
And that's pretty much my pastime. But golf, I've picked up exercising over these last couple of weeks, which I'm pretty proud of myself. Thanks for noticing, by the way,
I
guys.
did think you
Looking
looked
swole, man.
really good.
Thanks, man. It's the arms, It's the arms. But
I'd say the shoulders, the traps are really coming in.
it's the upper body, man. Lower body's not a big thing
Give
for
it
me.
time.
Yeah. Upper body. That's about it. And food. I love cooking.
I like cooking,
I am
too.
obsessed with it now.
It's become really difficult with the child that is roaming around at all times, because then you're putting everything on your wife. Like if I'm cooking, Kara is watching Luca, which means she is just at all times on call.
But you'll get to the point where the kids can entertain themselves, because that's
Sure.
where right now my 3 and 2-year-old, they'll play
Oh, give it
in the
about a month.
basement. Yeah, but then my wife will be home for 6 weeks, and then I
Sure.
can do more
Yeah,
cooking with
that's
it.
how that works, huh?
But look, I've already had the terror of what happens when she goes to work and you're left. It's those memes of like the person holding 3 kids and be like, what am I supposed to do with myself?
Yeah, very soon they're going to outnumber you and your wife.
That's fine, man.
That's gonna be fun.
I loved Phil Jackson's triangle
The triangle
option.
offense.
I'm going to do that with the kids. I'm going to find a way to master that art.
Yeah, you let me know how that goes for you.
Well,
Yeah.
no, we're just going to keep having them,
I also like cooking, really enjoy cooking. We like going out and finding new restaurants, love breweries. We take Luca with us, don't judge. It's a great way to go.
Why would
I
you
like,
judge, man?
some people judge for taking kids to breweries. I don't know, man. It's 2024. Raise your kids however you want to.
Hey, no judgment here, man.
Exactly.
Take my kids to casinos whenever
I like running. I don't think that's allowed.
it's not.
Those are probably the biggest things for me. And TBone likes watching war documentaries. He's 70.
Big PBS guy. Big
I haven't
PBS
watched a good
guy.
documentary in a while, and it's kind of sad.
He wakes up with
Just
Sesame
because I
Street
like
and goes to bed
learn
with...
about history, Brandon.
There's nothing wrong with
He
it.
wakes up with Sesame Street and he goes to bed with the Vietnam War.
If it's not a good documentary, it's video games for your boy or a good show.
Used to be video games for your boy.
Yeah, I like to go for walks as well. You can listen to a podcast, listen to some music.
Christmas music.
Oh, dude, we're almost at the 6 months mark.
Christmas in July, baby.
I will be turning July 25th. I will listen to Christmas music while it's 110 out on my wall.
Well, that'd be 5 months. June
That's ridiculous.
25th.
All right, from the 618,
yeah.
what are your thoughts on bringing back Tarasenko?
No.
Next question.
I don't think you... And that's nothing against Tarasenko. He just doesn't make sense for where your team is at right now. I would much rather have power play opportunities for Zach Bolduc and Dvorsky and Neighbors and Toropchenko, although BK doesn't believe he's a third liner. I'd much rather those guys have opportunities on a power play than having Vladimir Tarasenko on the power play. I don't think you need any more leadership on this team. Now you need talent.
I actually agree with that.
Yeah, I question the whole leadership thing to begin with, but I don't think
you
you
do.
need him unless you were like a as we've seen what his role is the last 2 years, unless you feel like you can contend for a cup, then you have Vladimir Tarasenko.
314-399. If you're going that route, I would rather bring back David Perron. If you're going, hey,
Amen.
Bring back a former Blue that can help you on the power play, help you put up some points, the answer is
because
David Perron.
that guy helps Bolduc develop his game.
Exactly.
That guy helps Snuggerud develop his game.
I think Tarasenko has found a really nice niche in the NHL. I think he is a guy that can be a third-line winger on a contender. That's who he is at this point in his career. And if he's willing to accept what that means in terms of his role and the money that comes along with it, I think he can build a nice next 3 to 4 years of what that looks like for him. It's kind of like, now they're different players, kind of like what Corey Perry became late in his career, where, hey, a contender needs somebody to come in and help them put up some points. Corey Perry can come be that guy. Vladimir Tarasenko can also be the next version of that. Again, I understand they're different players, but that's kind of what I think he's become.
I think he stays in Florida, Vladdy, and I think he's
been trying to get to Florida for 5 years.
I think he locks up a 4 or 5 year deal and stays for $2 or $3 million because he spends the rest of his time with a Stanley Cup contending team.
All right, from the 314, guys, do you think that the Oilers will force a Game 7?
I do, but I still think Florida wins in 7. I'm very concerned for Florida, but I'm going to go off of the veteran presence that team has over the Edmonton Oilers. I put it to the same situation as the Blues with Berube. Like, you got to a Game 7, and I think a lot of Blues fans thought it was over. Berube has been around the block, and he understands where they were. I think Paul Maurice knows how to get his team in the right mindset. Winning in Alberta is going to be tough. Winning the Stanley Cup elsewhere is tough all the time. So I'm going to say they force a Game 7, but Monday Florida wins.
I'm saying Florida ends it tonight.
Nice.
I think your point on Paul Maurice, I think Paul Maurice gets this thing figured out. They haven't been able to get to their forecheck the last 2 games. It's almost, we talked about it, it's which team can get to their style first is going to win the game. Well, first 3 games, it was Florida. The last 2, it's Edmonton. I expect the Panthers to come out and pull this one out tonight.
I've got Edmonton tonight. Florida wins in 7. With Alex and TBone on BK. Coming up next, how do we evaluate the pitchers that are moved at the trade deadline? I heard the Fast Lane talking yesterday, and it actually physically angered me as I was listening to the way that they were talking about a guy that we brought up yesterday. We'll discuss him and how we talk about players that can be acquired at the deadline next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and TBone on BK. So I was listening to the Fast Lane yesterday as I was in my car, and I was hearing Stalter and Carey and Jamie talk about what the Cardinals could do at the deadline, what they should do at the deadline. And Alex, it kind of upset me. First of all, because they were talking about our segment, and then they disagreed with it. And you know how this works.
Do they
can't disagree with me.
I was going to say, they disagree with
I'm
you?
not going to talk back about what you end up saying on my opinions.
So it was disagreeing with you, not me and T-Bone.
Real quick, Fastlane, I'm sorry for BK's tone that's about to come out.
Oh, yeah.
Just remember it was him.
He's so going to get that puffy chest right now.
No, I think there are two ways to look at this year's deadline. And three ways, actually. I think the Fast Lane falls into the middle category. My category is, I think you just go for it. Like, you're not all in, but this is a team that's worth investing in. You should add some more pitching at a minimum. The Fast Lane's category is, well, if you're going to invest, you got to go big. Otherwise, there's no reason to invest in this club. And then the third category is sell, sell, sell. This team stinks. They can't do anything. Please fire Mo, fire Ollie. This is a disaster. You got to get out of what you're doing right now. You're in this endless cycle of mediocrity. Get to the bottom and then get back to the top.
I think T-Bone and I are in a different category, though. We both said yesterday there's a sell-buy category that we would look at.
I guess there's four different categories.
I brought that up. I don't like that category.
I love that category.
So yesterday we brought up, hey, what if you went out there and got somebody that's performing well this year and is not traditionally a number two starter, but their current numbers are such that they've been a number two starter in terms of the quality so far this year. Eric Fetty fits into that criteria. Yusei Kikuchi fits into that criteria. There are others, but those are just a couple of names to put on what we were discussing. Well, yesterday, here's what Anthony Stalter had to say about the idea of adding, Eric Fetty.
I heard like BK and Ferrario and T-Bone, they were talking about, or you can get Eric Fetty from the White Sox. It doesn't move the needle at all. And in fact, I think BK brought up two young pitchers that you have to give up. I'm not giving up two young pitchers like Graceffo and somebody else to get Fetty from Chicago. I'm not getting Fetty from Chicago and giving up two pitchers in the process. Get the hell out. I'm not acquiring mediocre talent and giving up young pitching in my organization.
And I think Gordon Graceffo, and not to be rude, but Gordon Graceffo seems like average talent that you'd be giving up for average talent.
See, that's what I'm getting at here. I understand that we have this like PTSD of the Marcell Ozuna trade. So you give up multiple pitchers and they both become Cy Young candidates in their respective leagues. And so we just immediately, that's the flashpoint in our heads is, oh, it could happen again. Like you're going to give up the talent that becomes a superstar. And it's possible. It's possible that it comes back to bite you again. But guys, go back and look at the players that are traded at the deadline. The vast majority of them do not become that. There are exceptions. Last year, the Texas Rangers, now it was worth it because they went on to win the World Series. They gave up Cole Reagans, who is a really good young starter now for the Kansas City Royals. And in return, they got 3 months of Aroldis Chapman. Again, worth it. They won the World Series. It happens occasionally. It's rare. Most of the time, the guys that you give up end up becoming essentially what the Pirates got in return for Jose Quintana and Chris Stratton. You gave up a pitcher that has done essentially nothing.
I don't even remember who they traded for either of those guys.
What's his face?
Oviedo.
Oviedo was the guy they ended up giving up. That was the big piece.
Yeah.
That's probably the most likely outcome if the Cardinals were to give up somebody like Gordon Graceffo, and I think the guy that we talked about was Jerpy.
Jerpy was the one that Bowden referenced.
And maybe Jerpy ends up being a really good reliever. Maybe he ends up being a back-end starter. That's possible. But those are the most likely outcomes for him right now at a major league level. And so to get something at the deadline, you have to give something up. And the reason why I brought up Eric Fetty, and this is where I wanted to get into the conversation, because I think it becomes a bigger picture question about what do you value? Who should they be targeting at the deadline? Is how do you evaluate these guys? Because I think if I replaced Eric Fetty with Jesus Luzardo, I think the guys on the fast lane would be like, oh, yeah, sure. Of course you can give up those kinds of pitchers for that kind of talent. Well, Jesus Luzardo stinks right now, guys. He's been pitching like a number 5 so far this year. Meanwhile, Eric Fetty has the numbers, at least, of a number 2 starter. And so that's where I think it's really difficult is, okay, what are you actually targeting? Are you targeting history or are you targeting what they're doing right now? Does it matter what they're doing today in this current offensive environment, or does it matter more what they have been in their past? Because I think those are things that teams are going to have to grapple with as we get closer to the deadline, because there are a lot of players across the league that are not having their typical seasons, and there are other guys around the league that are having really good starts to the year, that are very different from what they've been for the vast majority of their careers. So how do you evaluate that, Alex, as we get closer to the deadline?
And see, and I'm not trying to put words in their mouth, but I would ask, when you're saying you got to go big if you're going to invest, going big, I would assume, is Garrett Crochet. That's probably.
I think Luzardo would fit into that criteria. For them. Would be my guess. Again, I'm like you. I don't want to put words in their mouth.
And Luzardo, to me, like Luzardo's Eric Fetty conversation, because like Luzardo has been so bad this year, and the reason I put him in the same conversation as Fetty is because Fetty's having a great year, but I know what the past couple of years have been of Fetty. Fetty was pitching in Korea because he couldn't make it in the majors and has gotten back to it. Luzardo was great last year, and he's been injured and has not been good this year. So it's like I can't look at what you're doing just now. I kind of have to look at the last couple of seasons and see where you're at. But like going big would be Crochet. And we talked yesterday. That's trading Jordan Walker. And there's no bleeping way this team should invest that going big, because you're not in the position that you can win by just adding one pitcher and depleting your minor league system. But like, how I judge Eric Fetty, I would look at that and say, good move by the Cardinals. You showed the aggressiveness that said, we feel like we need to push. Like, that feels a lot like a Jordan Montgomery move that they made a few years ago, where it's like, hey, you needed a push, and this was the push that you made, but it's not going to get me excited like all of a sudden this team is going to go on some deep run. The same would be said with Jesus Luzardo, because Luzardo's been so bad. I think the one that would at least get me a little bit more excited is Luis Severino, because I've seen what the best looks like, and I know he's got a ton of injuries with him, but him having a really good season this year, and I've seen what the best looks like, I look at that and I say, okay, you were going for what he's doing now, and hopefully you can get back to that upside.
I would say Fetty, the thing that makes him different to me, and this is why I find it to be difficult to talk about history with pitchers as opposed to what they're doing right now. Eric Fetty is not the same pitcher that he was when we last saw him in 2022. He has added a changeup that he is using about 20% of the time. Last time that we saw him as a major league pitcher, he used it 3% of the time. He has also incorporated a sweeper that he is now using 21% of the time. Last time that we saw him in Major League Baseball, he had a curveball that was his breaking ball. So he has completely changed his arsenal as a pitcher, from using a curveball, a cutter, and a sinker to now using a sinker, cutter, changeup, sweeper. Like, that is just a completely different style of pitcher compared to what he was previously. It's almost like talking about Sonny Gray from 7 years ago versus Sonny Gray from the last few years when his sweeper became one of the best pitches in all of Major League Baseball. Well, he's not the same guy. So if we're going to talk about Sonny Gray from early on in his career, yeah, you wouldn't give him the contract that the Cardinals just gave him. But if we're going to talk about Sonny Gray of what he's been lately, he's been one of the more effective pitchers in baseball. So that's who Eric Fetty is now. That's how I'm personally going to be evaluating him. So far this year, against his sweeper, opposing hitters are batting 185. Against his changeup, opposing hitters are batting 205. And all of the expected numbers are right in line with that. He's not getting lucky. He's just been really good with those pitches. So for me, Eric Fetty's pitching like a number 2 or a number 3. You can put whatever number you want on it. He's a mid to front end of the rotation starter now in Major League Baseball. But because there is a lack of history there, you can get him for cheaper than I can get many of the other guys that are available. This is the exact type of pitcher that I think the Cardinals should be looking to acquire right now. Now, you can make the argument they should have been looking to acquire him in the offseason, but there was more uncertainty then. I've now seen it. There's proof of concept. I know what it looks like against major league hitters as opposed to what it looked like overseas. So I'm trying to get this guy. He's 31 years old. He has another year of control, so he can be a part of your rotation again next year as well. Who knows if he'll be as effective then as he is right now, but I need somebody that can help me today. And it's only going to cost me, yes, a couple of young starters potentially, but it's not going to cost an arm and a leg the way that it would for Garrett Crochet, where now we're talking about big-time talent that you're giving up from your minor league system.
You're making yourself worse in one area as you're getting better in another area.
Meanwhile, this is something where, yeah, I'm giving up a couple of pitchers, but I also last year added to the minor league depth in terms of my pitching available to me, and I'm going to do it again in July with this year's draft in terms of adding to that talent. Fetty's the type of guy that I would be targeting personally. I don't want this team to go all in on 2024. I do think, though, that they should add to this year's team. And this gets to another question that they asked yesterday on the Fast Lane, and I want to explore this with you guys as well really quickly. So yesterday, Kerry was talking about why he doesn't know if it's worth adding to this year's roster. He explained on the Fast Lane.
Is this team capable of winning a championship? Because that should be the ultimate goal, not, okay, we're going to do something that to solidify the fact that we win this second or third wild card. That's what we're going for, because we ain't going to win the division. We're too far back at that point. And to give up something, a prospect or two for that, I don't know that that's a good decision.
This is where I disagree. I think it's worth it, guys. Like, I do put a premium. I put an emphasis. I put value on making the postseason. It's not the end-all, be-all. It does not mean it was an overwhelming success this year if the Cardinals from now until the postseason end up with 85 wins and they get into the playoffs and they added Eric Fetty and now they get into the playoffs and let's say they win in the wild card round and lose in the NLDS. Does that mean this year was like this rah, yay, everything's back to being great for the Cardinals and everything worked as expected? No. I'm not telling you should host a parade down Market because of that. But I do think sometimes we get into this binary discussion of you either win the championship or you failed. And I don't view it that way, guys. I do think if you throw a couple of pitchers at the deadline and you end up getting something that helps you and you do get into the playoffs because of that and you give yourself a better chance of getting through the playoffs because of it, yeah, I'm willing to make that kind of a move. As long as it's not mortgaging all of the future to do that. That's where I think you get yourself into trouble. That's what the Padres have been doing for the last 5 years. I don't agree with that level of selling off talent at the deadline. But I do think there's value in making the postseason, even if it's not the greatest win in the world. There can be incremental improvement here.
Yes, and I do think there's value in making the playoffs. I can't be a hypocrite because I said the same thing with the Blues. My only pushback with that is you've earned that value the previous few years, and now it's time to start seeing some progress. And that's why, to me, if you're making a move to just get into the playoffs, I would rather you just stand pat because you're probably going to get in no matter what. If you're making a move, it needs to be a move that gives you the upper hand in a wild card series or a DS, and that's where they're probably coming out of trying to be aggressive and going all in so you can see improvement there. It's just for me speaking as a fan, I want to see playoff baseball, but I'm also with the understanding of it's playoff baseball that's probably going to be over very quickly unless you make some type of significant move with your team. You've got to show me linear progress.
And that's why I think, and I'm starting to buy in more to the motion of becoming a small buyer. And when I mean small buyer, I mean buying what I would call a 2B. The Eric Fetty, the Luis Severino, the Kikuchi of Toronto. Like, those are 2Bs to me. But at least I can go into a game, and unlike the years prior, like 22 and 21, I can go, okay, so let's say you match up with, let's say they get to the DS and you match up with the Dodgers. Okay, so I've got Glass now versus Gray. Okay, I have a fighting chance now. I've got Yamamoto versus Fetty. Okay, I've got a fighting chance now. Game 3 is not going to be in our favor, but you know what? At least I can say games 1 and 2, I've got a fighting chance. And the other thing is,
and if Michaelis pitching the way that he has, I would actually say like a Ranger Suarez versus Miles Michaelis matchup.
Or Kyle Gibson.
It's in favor of the other team, but it's not so weighted in favor of them that I have no chance of winning that game.
And the other thing, too, in that value is getting into the playoffs. There's always one team that gets to the playoffs that limps in. And I don't mean backs in, I mean limps in. Look at the Dodgers of last year. Everybody talked about the LA Dodgers, and look at Mookie Betts, look at Freddie Freeman. Man, that team was fraudulent as hell last year.
Remember the Braves a couple of years ago, the way that they limped into the postseason as well? I think that was the year that the Phillies ended up beating them in the postseason. It's sometimes weird stuff happens in the final few weeks. Hell, look at the Cardinals in, 2022 with the injury to Helsley, the final game of the season. You would have gone into the postseason and been like, man, the Cardinals have this guy at the back end of their bullpen where if you're down, it's going to be really tough for you to be able to come back. And then he jams his thumb, and he's not the same pitcher in the first couple of games in the postseason. So that's weird stuff happens, guys. And I'm not telling you that you should buy all into this and be like, oh, man, hunky-dory, this is going to be great. Everything's fantastic. No. But I think the thing that I'm having a really hard time wrapping my mind around is like, I think Cardinals fans just assume because they're the Cardinals, they have to be championship or bust every single season. I don't think that was ever the goal for this year. And I know that's hard for fans to accept, and I'm not telling you that you should be excited about it, but I think this team's goal was, let's get back to respectability, and then hopefully that will be the start of a new window for them. Now, the window closed really quickly on Arenado, so maybe that changes some things. But I think this team getting to the playoffs, getting Mason Wynn some experience in the postseason, hopefully getting Jordan Walker some experience in the postseason, I think there's value in that kind of stuff.
And I think this is where it's tough, because I do think that first part you said of respectability is one of the goals for this season, and right now I don't think they're there. I understand they're in the playoff picture, but like if they were in the AL, they wouldn't be a playoff team.
That's fair.
And like they're at 500, so it's hard for me to say like they're a respectable ball club right now. And I think the other part that is where I don't know if it clouds the fans' judgment or not. This felt like the year where it was the passing of the baton. You know, you go from the older guys, now you start to hand this off to this young core of Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar, Jordan Walker, Mason Wynn. And the only guy you're really seeing play well is Mason Wynn. Donovan's turned it on of late, but Nootbaar, another injury-plagued season. Jordan Walker really carrying the Redbirds right now in Memphis. So I think those were the two goals for the Cardinals this season. And right now, I'd say they're failing at both of them.
More than a reasonable opinion there, and reasonable minds also can disagree on all of this. Like, I understand Carey, Jamie, Stalter, the fast lane, the guys have a differing perspective on all of this. That's fair. I think the biggest thing for me is just like the way that we evaluate talent going into the deadline is always interesting to me. I always thought like the Jordan Montgomery deal was super underrated because he's just a really good starter. And I think we underestimate the really good starters, and then we also underestimate the guys that are having success in that individual season. I remember we talked about this with Eno Saris a few years ago. Hey, guys with control, wait to see who performs that year, and then at the deadline, go target that guy. Guys with the stuff, that's who you target in the offseason. And the Cardinals, I think, had, with Sonny Gray especially, targeted somebody with stuff, and now at the deadline, go get the guy with the control that has had success in 2024. And I do think Eric Fetty is the exact type of guy that I would be targeting. Coming up next, is this the year that the Blues find a way to trade Torey Krug? We'll see. Coming up next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and TBone on BK, Alex, the Athletic, is trying to sell us on this idea again.
Why is that, man? What's
Every
the idea?
offseason, like clockwork, hey, this is the year that Doug Armstrong is going to be able to move the Torey Krug contract. Here's what they wrote.
To their credit, though, they're going off of trends. And last year, Perunovic signed, Krug got traded, and then got nixed.
Fair. The veteran puck-moving defenseman would have been a member of the Flyers last summer had he not exercised his right to block the potential deal with his no-trade clause. Now, another year later, the dynamics behind those discussions are unchanged, and Torey Krug is another year down to 3 years remaining left on his $6.5 million AAV contract. He also loses the full no-trade clause beyond this year. There may be slightly more move to maneuver the second time around, end quote. That came from The Athletic on their updated trade board over there. Alex, I feel like this has become an annual tradition for us. Is this the year that the Blues find a taker and that he accepts a deal to go elsewhere on Torey Krug?
I mean, you have to say yes because of what's in front of you. Let's look at it. Last year, Torey Krug tried to get traded, or the Blues tried to trade Torey Krug, and it got nixed. This year, Doug Armstrong in his end-of-season press conference said, yeah, the expectation is we'll probably change the defense a little bit, or the hope is we can change the defense a little bit. Well, you're not moving Parayko. You're not moving Falk, because Doug Armstrong has referenced Falk as a leader many times in his press conference. You've got Matt Kessel. You've got Tyler Tucker. You just signed Scott Perunovic, and Nick Leddy had a really good year. So process of elimination takes you to $6.5 million of Torey Krug that tried to get traded last year. And although I did feel like he played better defensively, I know a lot of people saw it and said, yeah, he's the same guy. He's a third-pair defenseman. So, yeah, I mean, I would imagine the Blues are probably going to explore the possibility of trading Torey Krug. And if you're Torey Krug, I do think it might be time to consider, because look at what's ahead.
Yep.
The no trade is modified, which means the Blues basically can trade him to the list that's not, or what's not on his list.
Now, 15-team no trade list starting next year.
Now, most of the teams that are going to be on his list are going to be the teams that have cap space that you could realistically make the trade with. Here's the other reason why I wonder if it's a lot more possible. Because of what took place a couple of days ago with Barclay Goodrow. Now, I know Doug has talked about the buyouts, and I don't really think the buyout is on the table, but it's a no trade clause. And the difference between a no trade and a no move is you could put them through waivers. And although you don't want to play $6.5 million on waivers, look at what the Rangers did. The Rangers basically told Barclay Goodrow, we're not going to keep you, and if you won't accept a trade, we'll put you in the minors. And he cleared waivers, and somebody claimed him. And it was a team that was on his no-trade list, the San Jose Sharks. So if you're Torey Krug, you have to keep that in the back of your mind.
Also, they just tried to trade him last offseason, so it's not like you're ruining a relationship. Torey Krug knows where he stands with this organization. They tried to get rid of him.
And you signed Scott Perunovic. So right now, you've got your defense in place if Torey Krug's not here.
If I'm Doug, I try like hell to find a trade this offseason. And I'm doing that over the next 2 weeks, basically. And if I can't find a trade that he's willing to accept, I'm doing exactly what you said. I'm saying, you know what? Fine. We're going to put you through waivers. And if you get claimed by a team that you don't want to go to, Torey, sorry, but we have to do what's best for the organization. How many times did Doug Armstrong say during the conversation that the press conference availability with Alex Steen, the first question that I ask is what's best for the Blues? And the last question that I ask is what's best for the Blues? Right now, if you just put on your cold-blooded Doug Armstrong suit, what's best for the Blues is to not have Torey Krug on the roster next year. That is not anything. That is a shot at Torey Krug, the person, the man. I thought he handled everything as well as could possibly be expected this season, given what last offseason had to have been like for him. But if you're asking the question, what is best for the St. Louis Blues purely from a hockey perspective, it is not having Torey Krug's $6.5 million on the books for next season, the year after that, and the year after that. And I would imagine if you're a team, for example, like the San Jose Sharks or one of the other teams that has $1 billion in cap space going into this offseason, he would be the type of player that you claim, and at the deadline, if you eat 50% of his salary, he could be a legitimate asset for somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the teams right now that have significant cap space, Utah, Anaheim,
Chicago would be the immediate one that I would point to.
The one that I always go to, which I don't know if he would do it, is Detroit. And I say I don't know if he would do it, meaning Steve Yzerman.
Yeah.
Torey Krug's from Michigan. So that one would make sense, but I don't know if Detroit would say that makes sense for us. Now, they're not bringing back Shane Gostisbehere, who was an offensive defenseman for them. Maybe that's a route that you can look at if you're the Blues and if Steve Yzerman wants to do it. I don't think he would, but it's just at the point where you look at, and they talk so much about the development stage and making sure that the guys are getting playing time. If you're the Blues, you just signed Scott Perunovich, and to what Curbs told us on Wednesday, you got to find out. And that you finding out is not playing him on the third pair up in the press box. It's putting him in top 4 minutes and letting him play. And you've got Nick Leddy. If Nick Leddy is going to be here, played well with Colton Parayko. Tyler Tucker, they view him as a player who can play consistently for you. I don't know where Torey Krug falls in the line of these players for this team. And you're right. If Doug's saying what's best for the team in the front and back, you look at that and you say, right now, $6.5 million can go towards an offer sheet for a significant player for us next year.
I was about to say, that's the other thing is if you're able to move this money off of your books, now the question that we asked earlier of can you go offer sheet somebody and make another move, whether that's signing Buchnevich to a long-term deal or bringing another player in, the answer to that question becomes yes.
Yeah.
It's a if-then question for the Blues in terms of what their offseason looks like. If the Blues find a taker or find a new suitor via waivers for Torey Krug, then they can make multiple moves. If they do not, then they can't. Then they can only make the one move of significance.
And if I'm Torey, and why I would be more willing to accept a trade to where somebody, like, let's say Philadelphia is still interested in this. My worry would be the San Jose Sharks claim me. And, I mean, if you don't want to go play for a bad team, like San Jose needs to get to the salary cap floor. Now, they might be close to it, but they've got $32 million in cap space. And Mike Grier has said, we need defense and we need leadership. If I'm him, I would be concerned about getting claimed by the San Jose Sharks, because if Doug's going to be ruthless, it's looking at him and saying, look, if you don't want to do this, we can put you through waivers. And if I'm not mistaken, this happened back with Doug Waite. It was when Doug Waite was traded to the Anaheim Ducks for Andy McDonald, and it was Doug didn't want to waive his no trade, and the Blues basically said, fine, we'll put you on waivers, and then you'll go to the minors and play down there, and he finally accepted a trade to Anaheim.
He's Alex, that's TBone, I'm BK. Blues have an interesting offseason ahead. We'll certainly be talking about it moving forward here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Coming up next, TBone has one thing in common with Barry Bonds, and I don't want Reggie Jackson's pregame comment to go overlooked. We'll play it for you in its entirety. This was really the reason for last night's game. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Terry Henderson's here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, the Cardinals beat the San Francisco Giants 6-5 at the Rickwood Field game. They are off today before they'll be back in action tomorrow to resume their three-game set with San Francisco. 1:15 will be first pitch. Jordan Hicks will be on the mound for San Fran. Miles Mikolas will get the start for the St. Louis Cardinals. And earlier today, the Cardinals made a couple of roster moves. They optioned Victor Scott down to Memphis after serving as the 27th man for last night's game, and have also optioned Adam Kloffenstein down to Memphis as they have activated Giovanni Gallegos from the 15-day IL. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
One of the legends of the Negro Leagues is Satchel Paige, and yesterday was a really cool moment for everybody to be able to hear some of the stories, share some of the stories once again of the players that shined in the Negro Leagues. And so pregame, they were having a lot of story time. They were remembering, they were talking to, it was Derek Jeter, A-Rod, Barry Bonds was on there, and then David Ortiz. And they asked a question of, hey, if you could have played with one of the guys that previously played at that stadium at Rickwood Field, who would it be, right? And so they went around, shared some of those memories. It was a really cool thing pregame. And then they asked a question of Barry Bonds, and Alex, in this moment, all I could think of was, Barry Bonds and Tanner Hendrickson have one thing in common.
Yep.
Literally just one thing, but it was on full display last night during the pregame show. TBone, let him hear it.
Tell me right now, on the spot, what would you do against Satchel Paige?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Gone. You done lost your mind, Jeter. Gone. Simple. Gone. Read about it on ESPN, Fox News, whatever else you want to talk about. You got to believe in yourself. If I don't believe in me, who gonna believe in me? That's right.
Yeah.
That is T-Bone to a T, dude. Yep. Tanner Hendrickson believes he could get a hit against Ryan Helsley. Tanner Hendrickson believes in a ping pong matchup against somebody that goes to the Olympics for ping pong, T-Bone would suddenly become Forrest Gump and he's winning the gold. I have never met anybody that has the irrational confidence of Tanner Hendrickson, but it is less irrational with Barry Bonds, who's the best baseball player I've ever
actually
seen.
Probably could go deep with Satchel Paige.
Absolutely, but for him to do that in that moment yesterday, the typical answer is there. Satchel's one of the greatest to ever do it. I don't. It would be a hell of a battle, right? But not with Barry Bonds. If you've got Barry Bonds on the set, he's going to give you an honest assessment of his opinion of himself, and we know that is highly inflated, for better or worse. And Barry Bonds immediately, what would happen if you were going up against Satchel? Gone. Absolutely amazing moment on Fox's pregame show yesterday. And the only thing I could think of as I saw it, that is Tanner Hendrickson.
Yep.
Tanner Hendrickson and Barry Bonds have the exact same belief in themselves.
Yeah, you got to believe in yourself, guys. I don't understand why you guys don't. You should look into that.
Oh, yeah, because we're the only ones. Your parents legitimately texted you and said there's no bleeping
Look,
way.
I have family issues now because of that. But you got to believe. You got to believe in yourself.
Mima was even like Tanner.
Yeah.
Mima was like T-Bone.
Yeah,
Look,
come on,
man.
guys. You got to believe in yourself. I could totally hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball from Helsley. If you don't believe, as Bond said, who else will believe you? Clearly not your family.
I was
on
the
my
same way.
case.
I believed that I could hit a ball over the wall at our the home run derby, and we all saw how that went.
And you know what? Just because you failed, don't let that change your attitude.
Yeah, you're right. You'll get out there and get a big single off of Ryan Helsley.
I thought Barry Bonds was amazing in
I
pregame
respect the
yesterday.
hell out of that answer.
I thought he was fantastic. I also, listen, this is something that me and Tanner just philosophically disagree with. We have some philosophical differences, which has become a thing here.
Oh, no.
You
Who's
like
going?
cheaters.
Who's going? Then who's mowing? Who's Schilt?
I was glad to see baseball embrace all of its history, good and bad, yesterday at Rickwood. And part of that history is Barry Bonds and what happened during the steroid era. So for him to be a part of that game, and yes, he is the godson of the late Willie Mays, and so it made sense as the tie there. But, man, we've seen this with baseball. Sometimes they're like, I don't want to show that part of what baseball used to be. for Barry Bonds to be a significant part of that, they had him featured. He and Ken Griffey Jr. were like the featured guests yesterday going onto the field right before the game. I thought that was really a good decision by Major League Baseball. I was happy to see it, and I wish that they would now put him into the Hall of Fame, but that's a different conversation for a different day.
I was just glad that they did that, because you might not like Barry Bonds, but Barry Bonds was a massive piece of baseball history, and every single opportunity that we're talking about baseball history, those guys need to be there. So I'm with you.
Another significant piece of baseball history is what happened at Rickwood Field. Rickwood Field exists in part because there were two teams that played there. There were the Black Barons and there were the White Barons. And Alex, I think some of what happened last night, and this is natural, this is the way that these kinds of events go, is a little bit of a whitewashing of the storytelling of what this meant, right? It was really cool to see all of the living Negro League players and some of their kids celebrated prior to that game. It's well overdue, but it was cool to see it. John Batiste with the whole celebration, like it was unbelievably well done, but it looked happy, right? That felt like a happy moment. And for many of them, their memories in Birmingham, Alabama were not happy. For many of them, this was one of the most trying parts of their lives because of the racism that they faced, because of the Jim Crow era of racism that existed down there. And Reggie Jackson tore off that Band-Aid and exposed everything that took place in his time while he was playing in Birmingham in the minor leagues. And Alex, I want to play this in its entirety because I thought it was the most important thing that was said on the broadcast at any point yesterday. And it happened pretty early in the pregame show. So I think a lot of people that watched the broadcast might not have seen this. They saw Reggie Jackson on the broadcast. This was not a part of that. But I thought it was about 2.5 minutes that are worth every single person's time. Here's Reggie Jackson, not pulling any punches, telling exactly what it was to play in Birmingham.
How emotional is it for you to come back to a play that you played with one of the greatest teams around?
Alex, when people ask me a question like that, it's like coming back here is not easy. The racism that I played here, the difficulty of going through different places where we traveled. Fortunately, I had a manager and I had players on the team that helped me get through it. But I wouldn't wish it on anybody. People said to me today, I spoke, and they said, you think you're a better person? You think you won when you played here in Concord? I said, you know, I would never want to do it again. I walked into restaurants and they would point at me and said, can't eat here. I would go to a hotel and they say, then can't stay here. We went to Charlie Finley's country club for a welcome home dinner, and they pointed me out with the N-word. He can't come in here. Finley marched the whole team out. Finally, they let me in there. He said, we're going to go to the diner and eat hamburgers. We'll go where we're wanted. Fortunately, I had a manager, Johnny McNamara, that if I couldn't eat in the place, nobody would eat. We'd get food to travel. If I couldn't stay in a hotel, they'd drive to the next hotel and find a place where I could stay. Had it not been for Raleigh Fingers, Johnny McNamara, Dave Duncan, Joe and Sharon Rudy, I slept on their couch 3-4 nights a week for about a month and a half. Finally, they were threatened that they would burn our apartment complex down unless I got out. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. The year I came here, Bull Connor was the sheriff the year before. And they took minor league baseball out of here because in 1963, the Klan murdered 4 black girls, children, in 11, 12, 14 years old at a church here and never got indicted. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. At the same time, had it not been for my white friends, had it not been for a white manager, and Rudy, Fingers, and Duncan, I would have never made it. I was too physically violent. I was ready to physically fight some. I'd have got killed here because I'd have beat someone's ass, and you'd have saw me in an oak tree somewhere.
Man, that's some truth.
Yeah, I just got goosebumps again listening to it.
That is the kind of thing that I didn't expect to see on last night's broadcast. And frankly, it was necessary.
I have a feeling that people pushed back on the idea of this And I'm
I
glad.
couldn't believe that Fox allowed it to be shown.
I'm glad there was somebody with Fox that said this has to be on our, like, whoever told him that this needs to be on our broadcast, they deserve an Emmy for it, because that needed to be on that broadcast last night.
Because last night was a lot of celebrating the Negro Leagues, which is good. The stories need to be told. That is the whole purpose of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, is to continue to tell the stories of the men that were a part of it, because otherwise that history is lost. If you don't continue telling the stories repeatedly, the stories get lost, right? That's for any culture, certainly for the Negro Leagues. The other aspect of this is, man, this wasn't the Negro Leagues. He was playing in minor league baseball.
Yeah.
He's talking about 1967 Birmingham, when he was playing in minor league baseball for the major leagues. He was a part of the Kansas City A's organization at the time, and they had their team based in Birmingham. This is not even 60 years ago. Yeah. This man is able to now go on television and talk about the story, and like, he is sharp as a whip still. This is not that far in our history, man. And so for him to go on the broadcast last night and give this kind of a truth on the pregame show, I applaud him for being willing to say something like this on what he knows is a Major League Baseball broadcast, where they are trying to shine light on, look at all of the good that can be done here. And it has. But, dude, there was also a lot of bad. Yep. There was also a lot of bleep that these guys had to go through. And so for many of the players, that had to be hard as hell to go back to a place that has some really dark memories. And for Reggie Jackson to go there and to remember some of the things that he went through, I would imagine, as he's just driving through the streets going to the stadium again, had to be one of the hardest things that he's ever done. A, to actually live it the first time around, and B, to now go back there. And I would imagine there were some mixed emotions for some of the players that are thinking to themselves, man, there's a lot of joy and pride in what I accomplished here, but also there's a lot of hurt. And right now it seems like we're only celebrating the good and the joy and the pride in it. And so for last night, I thought it was a big moment on the broadcast to shine light on some of the negative aspects that were also taking place while at Rickwood Field. So this rarely happens. Normally, you only see the positives. Good on Reggie Jackson. Good on the Fox broadcast. Good on A-Rod for asking the question.
Absolutely.
And then for everybody on the panel shutting up and allowing Reggie Jackson to go on for 2.5 minutes about what that experience was like. And then for them to take a moment and appreciate and understand what had just happened on their broadcast. Yep. Kudos to everybody involved for that.
They say, history repeats itself, and I think for something as big as this was in Major League Baseball, to put this on center stage, it was so important to put that out there, and especially in society today where it seems like everything is so negative all the time, man, to sit there and to listen to him. And again, I'm a history nerd, so like all of the bad, you sit there and you think like, man, how did this happen? I thought the imagery that Reggie Jackson painted, I thought was the part that really struck, talking about how that ending clip of him saying, like, I was ready to get into fights 24/7, and him ending that whole speech saying, like, I would have been hanging in an oak tree somewhere. I thought the imagery that Reggie Jackson put into it just painted a different picture of what they were celebrating that night. And you're right, BK, as much of that was supposed to be positive, of celebrating the Negro League and what these men had to go through to get to this point, you can't do last night's broadcast without Reggie Jackson stating the bad that those players had to go through. And that's why I hope that people heard it and let it sink in. And for people that didn't hear it, and if you're just hearing the tail end of this, go back and do yourself a favor and listen to it, because this was so impactful by Reggie Jackson.
Yeah, somebody from the 636 said, shows how far we've come in a very short period of time. No doubt about it, but also still how far we have to go.
Yeah.
Because when Reggie Jackson is going on that broadcast and talking about these things, like, think about some of the stories that you're told now, and like, there is still more progress that needs to be done, but that is a different conversation for a different day on a different show. We will get back to our usual shenanigans coming up next on the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN. Alex, I'd like to take some time to... I don't know what just happened with my voice there.
Alex, I'd like to take some time and talk about puberty.
You say, you want to talk about that?
No, I wouldn't. I would like to actually continue to move on.
Oh, no, we're going to lay on this one for a little bit.
I'd like to take some time to appreciate what Virginia Hislop was able to accomplish. She is 105 years old.
Well, that's enough
And
for me
she
to
recently
celebrate.
got her master's degree from Stanford University.
Props to you.
It took her 83 years to get it. She left school to care for her family during the Second World War, and 83 years later, she has officially received her diploma at the age of 105.
That's awesome.
Unbelievable accomplishment. My question to you.
No.
Alex, are there... No, well, I'm not saying
I thought you were going to say, are you going to go back to school when you're that old? No.
Are there things you'd like to accomplish as you get later on in life? Like for a lot of people, they say, hey, after my kids get older, I'd like to travel, right? But are there other things that you like to do when you don't have kids at home anymore and you can do stuff kind of, on your own time?
It's wild because, I haven't sat down to think of it because you're such the early stage of kids. But one thing Katie and I have talked about is we would love to travel and see places that we're probably not going to be able to see when we have kids. Like my parents went to Mount Rushmore. They went on a trip to the West Coast as well. I think they went to Deadwood. They traveled a ton of different places. And all of that, I looked at and I'm like, I could never do that with my kids because my kids won't want to go on those trips. It's always going to be like Disney World and beaches and things like that. So traveling was a big part of me, but I guarantee there are going to be things as I get older and my kids get older that I'm going to be like, man, I would love to try that. And again, I feel like I'm not at the point where I can sit down and be like, oh, what do I want to do before I die? Because you're just at this early stage with your kids.
I'd like to try shrooms when I'm 85 years old.
Okay.
That's just something
I thought this was like a heartfelt conversation. I'm like, what would you do on your bucket list? And then this dude
He said it accomplished something.
This dude just swarms in. He's like, I'd like to do shrooms when I'm 90.
There's a certain point in time in your life where I'd like to experiment. But if we set that aside for a second, other thing,
what just happened?
I'd like to travel, of course.
No, I don't just get to go from I'd like to try shrooms when I'm 85 to I'd like to travel. What the hell just happened?
Yeah, well,
I feel like when I'm going to be 90, I'm going to be that video clip of the woman at her birthday party where she's like, they're singing to her. She's like, just kill me already.
That is 100% going to be you, by the way. Alex is going to get to 75. His back's going to hurt when he wakes up. And he's going to be like, I'm good.
75, it already hurts. What else do you want to do, man, other than your shrooms?
I'm sure TBone has thought about this. For some reason in the back of my mind, TBone has thought about what he wants to do when he's 70.
TBone BK wants to recreate Breaking Bad when he's 90.
Yeah, I know.
Start selling meth out here.
It's unbelievable. I don't know if there's really a major thing that I would want to accomplish. One thing I do want to do.
Many of our text line, by the way, we have at least 10 people on our text line have said, why wait?
What is happening right now?
People say they're great. I don't know.
I don't want to accomplish that. I don't want to accomplish that.
Jumping on that train, man.
One thing that I want
wants to travel. Sorry, T-Bone. The other one wants to go on a trip.
I thought he was we're talking about a lady who just accomplished her master's, and BK's like, what do you want to do before you died? I'd like to try shrooms. Cool, man.
T-Bone.
One thing I want to do, and I've started it already, is I want to go to every Major League Baseball stadium. Really, every professional sports stadium would be what I would want to do.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I know. That's part of the problem. And I wouldn't mind doing the minor leagues too. I enjoy going to a random minor league ballpark because each stadium, especially in baseball, has its own characteristics that make it stand out. Like Nashville, the scoreboard is a guitar, which is awesome. So I would say that is one thing I definitely want to accomplish. And I think I've been to 15 big league ballparks, so I'm halfway there, and I've only been to a handful of NBA arenas, NHL stadiums. So,
dude, the graveyard has a lot of shroom dealers on it. There are a lot of people that are like, oh man, I can hook you up with that. Oh yeah, I got some of that for. What is wrong with you people?
There's nothing wrong, man. People do what they do in their private life. Whatever it is that you're interested in, you do it on your own. Be safe, be smart. Otherwise,
a lot of people that are commenting saying, "Oh, BK, I could get that for you."
Another thing,
I actually like that. We've cultivated the right audience here on BK Pro.
I don't know if I want to be associated.
Yeah, I'm not associating myself with that one, man.
Well,
I've cultivated my kind of audience.
I thought for sure BK was going to have like an answer like this one would be one that I'd want to do as well, like be on a game show or something.
Oh, dude, I would love to be on a game show.
Like I'd love to be like on one of those, like Family Feud or something.
I am so jealous of the Riz Show guys that they got to be on Beat Shazam. I really think we should put together a video for us to try and get on a game show as a group.
What would be our go-to?
Dude, I could crush any game show. You guys don't understand. I am an elite game show person.
That's Barry Bonds' confidence that I like right there.
Yeah, but I could back it up, dude. Ask my wife.
I can back mine up.
No, you can't. The only thing I watch is game shows. T-Bone goes to a batting cage at Swing Around Funtown and hits 65 miles an hour and goes, I could do 100.
You can boost those bad boys up. Let's not discredit mine.
I Family Feud, I think I could crush, but you have to rely on other people, which I'm not all about. And BK over here talking about shrooms. I don't trust him on my team. But there's, like America Says on Game Show Network, oh, game over, guys.
I feel like I would be elite on Family Feud. Like, elite.
You would be?
I think
you got to bring your family. I don't trust my family.
I trust the two of you. We're basically family. It'd be the two of you and Ryder with us.
I trust Ryder on a game show.
I feel like Ryder would be really good on Family Feud.
Ryder's like me. He won't admit it, but he goes home and watch Game Show Network.
Absolutely.
On his couch with the tea.
I think the four of us would be, out of all of our shows, who do you think would be the best at Family Feud?
It's not even confidence. I would crush.
Randy's really good at trivia.
But it's different.
It's not trivia, man.
Trivia. Family Feud is can you get like the most common answer. So it's
and
really
you have to
about
be quick.
Crowdsourcing.
And you got to be quick. I'm telling you, we would crush it.
Like Randy would be great on Jeopardy. Like if there was sports Jeopardy, I would pick the opening drive over anybody else on the station. There is no close second.
You know the other game show that I always wanted to do, and it's not airing anymore. Minute to Win It.
Oh, dude, we used to do those. We used to.
Katie and I did them all the time.
In high school, they had those videos where they would show you like, hey, here's how you recreate some of the things that we did.
Yep.
Me and like 10 of our buddies, we would have like Minute to Win It nights where we would have competitions with the games that they played. Oh,
Katie and I used to do it all the time with friends on New Year's Eve. We do Minute to Win It competitions.
Yeah, that show did not last. Like I do remember that, but it didn't.
It started, and then they brought in like a Apollo. What was the Olympic ice skater? Apollo Ono? Was that his name? I don't remember what his name was. But then he was the host, and it just was terrible after that. Yeah, we need to find a game show and sign up. Put a video together of us doing it. Because I promise you we will win money, and we'll donate it somewhere, probably to my kids' college fund.
Books. Like right now, you guys know how this job is. Like you just get so into the everyday, I've got to read for that day's events. I want to get back into the mode of like consistently reading, and that is something that I can't wait for when I retire. Just reading a boatload of books.
You trying to make yourself sound like a scholar now after the opening where you said I'm going to do shrooms?
I can do both, right? Like
I don't think you can actually. I'm not sure you could read while you do it.
You have a good time. Jesus, work hard, play hard, you know? This is why Alton's so much fun. With Alex and T-Bone and BK coming up in 15 minutes, the Cardinals are winning the Central, according to one MLB analyst. But next, is Adam Kloffenstein a thing? Maybe not. Cardinals seem to think not. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. So the Cardinals yesterday decided in a one-run game in the 8th inning with a bunch of right-handed hitters coming up to go with Adam Kloffenstein.
Ollie's ready to
Major
win.
League debut in a nationally televised game.
Ollie said, let's win this one.
He had JoJo Romero available, one of their best relievers all season long, who's mostly been good against right-handed hitters. Now, they've had some more success against him lately. It is worth noting that. But one of the pluses of JoJo Romero is that he didn't previously have significant splits. Alex, they decided to go with Adam Kloffenstein. And today, they decided to send down Adam Kloffenstein. He lasted exactly 1 day on the Major League roster. He now has to spend at least the next 15 days on the minor league roster unless somebody were to get hurt, and then he could potentially replace them. I'm curious what this means, because the Kloffenstein spot yesterday is typically JoJo's lane. And I understand, again, it's a bunch of right-handed hitters, so it's not the ideal scenario. But them going with Kloffenstein in that particular setting felt telling to me on either one of two things. One, they think Adam Kloffenstein can legitimately help them right now. Or two, something's up with JoJo, and they're not trusting him against right-handed hitters. And now that we've seen Kloffenstein get sent down, it feels like it's the latter. What did yesterday indicate to you, if anything, in terms of the usage of Adam Kloffenstein in that 8th inning spot?
It's the JoJo Romero side. It was something's up with JoJo, and they don't trust him right now. And frankly, it seems like you're at the point with the big three that all three are going through something with Ryan Helsley, with Romero, and with Andrew Kittredge. And in that position, when you have a tight ball game, I just looked at that as, okay, Ollie does not trust JoJo to get through this inning, and they're going to go to a guy who, yes, is a rookie, but also somebody who the other team doesn't have a whole lot of scouting on compared to JoJo Romero. So I actually thought that was the smarter move for Ollie to go to, especially if you don't trust JoJo, or if he's struggling, if he's got some type of injury that we don't know about. That told me everything about where JoJo is at in terms of the confidence level with the manager, more than it said they believe Kloffenstein can pitch.
After the game yesterday, Ollie Marmol was asked about that, and he said normally we'd go with a righty there against Soler. It would probably be Fernandez. And then we'd kind of do what we normally do with Kittredge, JoJo, and Helsley, but that wasn't an option today. With runners on, we decided to bring in Kit because that's where the game can be flipped. Totally understand. Then you know that you're wide open in the 8th. You can go JoJo in that righty lane, but you've got Soler, Flores, and Slater who do a really nice job against lefties, so we took the shot with Kloffenstein there. TBone, what did you read into that yesterday?
I think that JoJo's hurt. That's what I think it is. And I think they're saying this stuff to try and hope that they don't have to place him on the IL when they come home on Saturday. Because I still think they would trust JoJo Romero, and the reason I say that is Oliver Marmol has never shown a willingness to throw a rookie into that kind of spot before.
Yeah.
He will typically go with low leverage to, okay, let's build up to kind of like 6th inning, high leverage spot.
I like the way he does that.
Okay, now you're ready to be into these high leverage spots. He did that with Andre Palante when he first came up with the club back in 2022.
Fernandez is the perfect example. They didn't trust him at all the first 10 days of the season. Then he gets into a very low leverage spot, and then he works his way up from there. And now he's used in the most high leverage situations.
And you saw that with Roycroft as well, to where he started off on those low leverage spots to all of a sudden he's pitching in these big leverage spots. Yep. I think Romero's hurt, and that's a tinfoil. I know nothing about that, but the fact that he hasn't pitched since Monday, and there have been multiple lanes for him that Ollie Marmol would reference. If this was just the one-time occurrence, like say JoJo had pitched on, I don't know, Tuesday in that Marlins series, for example, I could say, okay, I could see how you come to that conclusion. But even then, it's a little hard for me to say because, again, I've never seen Marmol go this route with a kid like Kloffenstein. To me, it signals that something is wrong with JoJo, and I don't think it's a lack of trust because I still think he's got the best stuff of your left-hand relievers. And if my choice is JoJo and his best stuff versus against righties, which, yeah, he's had some struggles with, or a rookie, which I have the unknown of what he's going to be coming out of the bullpen at Rickwood Field, has to be nervous as hell to be making his big league debut, that's never an Ollie Marmol choice. I think something's wrong with JoJo, and I'm keeping my eye on to see if he gets placed on the IL tomorrow.
Well, if he's hurt, they need to place him on the IL today.
Yeah, today would have been the day
he
to
should
do
have
it.
just been placed on the IL today, and then you can keep Kloffenstein on.
My guess is they're waiting. Well, if you place JoJo on IL, you can keep you can just recall Kloffenstein.
Well, why not do that today? Like, what's the point?
The hope is that JoJo doesn't have to go on the IL. My guess is they're going to find out tomorrow.
I think it's more of a dead arm thing, probably.
He's been away for a while.
Hurt thing, it feels like it's probably more of a dead arm thing than it is anything where it's like a legit injury. I don't know, but he's thrown 16 pitches since June 11th. So that's now the last 10 days. He's appeared in 2 games for those 16 pitches. He has appeared 3 times in the last 2 weeks. There is a clear message that is being sent in their usage. Again, follow the actions, not the words from the team. Their actions will tell you they don't trust Dylan Carlson. They don't think he's a major league hitter right now. Their actions will tell you something's up with JoJo. I don't know if that's a dead arm. I don't know if that's something more significant. Maybe it's just, hey, I'm not feeling right. Or maybe he got sick yesterday. Who knows, right? Like, we don't know what's going on there, but their usage over the last 3 weeks with JoJo Romero, given how they had used him previously, suggests they're backing off for one reason or another. I think they might have to do the same here pretty soon with Andrew Kittredge, because he's showing signs of a guy that hadn't pitched for the vast majority of last season, pitching a whole hell of a lot in big leverage situations this year. And he doesn't look like the same pitcher that he did early in the season. So we've talked about his issues with left-handed hitters. Guys are just not whiffing on his stuff as much as they did early on in the season. I think the Cardinals right now, when you look at where they're at with their bullpen, they're getting close to needing another reliever. And that could be in the form of Giovanni Gallegos. His minor league rehab stints do nothing to give me confidence that he can be that guy. Maybe it becomes Riley O'Brien. Maybe it's somebody like an Adam Kloffenstein who can help you down the road. That is one other thing that I think was a nice unintended consequence of yesterday, of what they did with JoJo / Kloffenstein. Hey, maybe this guy can be a reliever for us. And TBone has mentioned this. They decided in AAA to keep Ian Bedell on that roster. Now, I don't know how they're going to maneuver this. Maybe they will have another spot where Kloffenstein can just fit back into their rotation down there. Or maybe Kloffenstein now works out of the bullpen in AAA, and he becomes somebody that they can call up and down along with Roycroft as part of that Memphis shuttle. That's possible, too. They need to add a couple of more arms to that Memphis shuttle. Maybe he becomes the next one that they consider there, because, there's been a lot of guys that have stalled out starting-wise down there. Maybe some of them can become bullpen arms for you.
Yeah, and their actions today are interesting because the guy that they sent down from the AAA roster to AA was a bullpen arm. So somebody's going to go fill his spot in the bullpen, whether that's Kloffenstein, Bedell, somebody's going to do that. Maybe they move a Thompson out of the rotation to the bullpen. My guess, after seeing Kloffenstein last night and how effective he was, I wonder if they try it. Maybe have him continue to stretch out a little bit. Like they had Roycroft when he was down there going like 2 innings. Maybe they want him to become a bridge guy, especially if you're stuck with Palante until the trade deadline, which is what the expectation probably should be at this point, since Matz is getting a second opinion on his back. Maybe you go send Kloffenstein down, have him work along with Roycroft to become multi-inning relievers, and then you call one of them up when their service is up, when they're served their 15 days in the minors, or someone goes on the IL. Now you have someone that can kind of, quote-unquote, piggyback with Andre Palante.
I mean, it's the way to do it, because then you don't have to worry about adding bullpen help at the trade deadline. You focus on your starting pitching, because none of these starting pitchers are going to benefit you and be better than Andre Palante until Matz comes back. That's probably the best way to go about it, and then you just go back to Kloffenstein being a starting pitcher next year for you. I mean, I didn't mind him out of the bullpen. It wasn't any I was wowed by it, but hey, if it's another arm that I can use at some point when other guys have dead arm or are used too much, I'm here for it.
I was wowed just because I figured we were losing the game when they went to Kloffenstein.
Yeah. Well, I thought they were losing when Helsley came on the bullpen.
He did a good job. I like what he said after the game. He was like, I couldn't see the scoreboard. From our vantage point in the bullpen, I literally could not see what the score was or what inning we were in at that point, and he had lost track. So he came into the game. They said, hey, you've got 3 righties coming up. This is your inning. And he said, all right, cool, I'll go do my job. And then he says, the way that he recalled it, is as he's walking off of the mound, he looked up at the scoreboard and realized, oh, my God, that was the 8th inning. I just set up Ryan Helsley in a 1-run game at Rickwood Field. So a pretty unbelievable major league debut for Kloffenstein, and then he's sent down the very next day.
The Cardinals always do that. And whether it's on your birthday, you don't cover a bag.
Dude, I feel bad for A, Kloffenstein, who got sent down right after that performance, and B, Chris Roycroft, who got sent down as a bullpen casualty right before the big game at Rickwood Field. He was probably all excited.
Cover the bag.
I get to go to this Rickwood game. It's going to be fun. No, you're going to Memphis.
Were you guys surprised at all that they didn't call up Jordan Walker for that yesterday?
No.
I was shocked
because
they called
of
him
the
Victor
event.
Scott. Yeah.
Not because of his production or anything, but I'm a little surprised they didn't call up Jordan Walker. I think if anybody has spent any amount of time with Jordan Walker, I think he really would have appreciated that yesterday. Now, he had a home run in Memphis. Like, he produced. He's there for a reason, and he clearly understands that.
I think that's why they didn't do it, because you can't break up what they're trying to accomplish.
I don't know, man. That's one of those. That is a once-in-a-lifetime type of event that you can enjoy and appreciate and take in. Now, Victor Scott got the call-up, more than worthy of it, and good for him, and I'm glad he was able to experience it. I'm pretty surprised they didn't do that with Jordan Walker, even if they had no plans to use him whatsoever. And it made more baseball sense to call up Victor Scott. Like, they used him in the ninth inning for a reason. They put him out there for a defensive replacement. I'm guessing they thought, hey, speed or defense, either way, if we need a pinch runner late in the innings or if we need a defensive replacement, he's somebody that can legitimately help us. Meanwhile, they wouldn't have used Jordan Walker in any scenario yesterday, most likely. I was a little surprised they didn't call him up, though. I just thought, hey, from a pure human perspective, like, this is a dude you're really counting on long term. Jordan Walker comes from the South, and his parents are both in academia. He has a great understanding and appreciation of the history of the game. I think Walker really would have been somebody that took everything in yesterday, and that would have been one of those moments that's like a pretty cool thing for him to be able to experience. They brought a lot of their black minor league players to that game yesterday. Like, Tink Kentz was at the stadium for that event. Chase Davis at the stadium for that event. I was a little surprised they didn't do the same thing with Jordan Walker, even if they just took him off of the roster and said, hey, come on down. We want you to be a part of this without making the official transaction. I was a little surprised by that. Not necessarily disappointed, but pretty surprised.
And we don't know. Maybe the other side of it is maybe they did ask, and he said, I'd rather stay here, and I'd rather keep getting these at-bats, because long picture, long-form view for Jordan Walker is I got to get back to the majors and stay at the majors.
Somebody on the text line said, because he's black? Yes, because he's black. That is exactly why I'm saying this. Like, I don't think that's a controversial statement at all.
Well, no, you were celebrating the Negro Leagues. Like, I think that's the point of why. That's, to me, I think why they had Victor Scott there, so he could experience that.
Like that. Yes, of course. Like that. Before the game, Adam Jones said, we're here to celebrate black excellence. Mason Wynn was interviewed pregame because he grew up with his stepfather putting the names on the back of his jerseys of former Negro League players that he and his barnstorming team could go out there, and the next day they could wear their names on the back of their jerseys on that day. And then the next day they would all talk about what they learned that night as they researched those Negro League players. So, yeah, I absolutely think that is a part of the calculus on what you decided to do there and the players that they decided to invite. I think it was 4 minor league players from the Cardinal system that were invited to go to Birmingham yesterday with the team. All 4 of them were black players. There's a reason for that. It's smart. It's also something that I would want those players to be there for. So, yeah, that's to answer the question directly. Of course, that's part of why you would consider that. I was a little surprised that they didn't decide to do that. But like Alex said, it's entirely possible. They said, hey, is this something you'd like to do, Jordan? And he probably said, no, I want to earn it. I want to earn my way back. It's entirely possible that was part of the calculus there. All right, coming up next, there was somebody that was in attendance yesterday at Rickwood, Alex, that went on the morning show earlier today and said, I think the Cardinals are winning this division. Okay, you'll never believe who it was. I'll tell you next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK. Are your workouts giving you the same results right now as they did 5, 10, 15 years ago? Do you feel the same way in the morning, the same energy as you did when you were younger? If the answer to those questions is no, it may be due to low testosterone. It's something that a lot of guys deal with, especially as they get into their 30s. It's something that they can help you with over at Victory Men's Health. They've got 4 great locations across the St. Louis area, and you can check out all of their information by going to victorymenshealth.com. They will help you unlock your inner champion. They're doing this for me. I went in a couple of weeks ago for my lab draw. I'm going in next week for my consult, and the way that they can help you out is they'll tell you all about your micronutrient levels and where you're at in terms of your testosterone levels as well. And when they find out what those are and they start talking with you, they'll get a plan that is specifically made for you to unlock that inner champion, get you back to feeling like your best version of yourself. You can check them out today. Again, 4 great locations across the St. Louis area and at victorymenshealth.com. That's Victory Men's Health and victorymenshealth.com. With Alex and TBone on BK, I was listening to the morning show earlier today, Alex, and they had their weekly segment with the one, the only Greg Amsinger. He missed it yesterday. I'm guessing he was busy with everything taking place at Rickwood, but he did answer today, and they asked him about what his current thoughts are on the St. Louis Cardinals. And Alex, you're never going to believe this. Greg Amsinger still believes.
Oh, of course.
I think this team, I'm going to say it once a week, is going to win the Central. I think they have more depth in the organization than the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah.
And the Brewers have hit like gangbusters to start the year. Cardinals have not completely. They're starting to come out of hibernation. And I think this team, like you said, their record since Mother's Day is a reflection of how talented they are, how they will remain. And look, should they have won more than one game in Miami? Yeah, that stunk. They lost 2 or 3, but they're both in walk-off fashion. I still like where this team's at, and I think they're going to win the Central. They believe they're going to win the Central.
Okay.
Alex, is this what I sound like?
Yes. Yeah. Same guy that told us that because of Nolan Arenado's incredible batting practice, he was about to go on a tear. Checks notes, hasn't gone on a tear yet. And did he just say they're hitting like gangbusters?
No, he's talking about the Brewers.
Okay, because
he said the Brewers to start the year are hitting like gangbusters. Dude, we're 75 games in for the Brewers. This is no longer to start the year. We're halfway through.
Because I'm going to go
through. The Brewers just hit well. I can't explain it. You look at their lineup, I look up and down it, and I say to myself, yeah, they can't hit. And then I look at the production. They're hitting. Yeah, they're hitting better than just about anybody in baseball.
I thought he said the Cardinals, and it's like 1 run versus the Pirates, 4 run versus the Pirates.
He said
3.
the Cardinals are coming out of hibernation, which is a fair way to talk about it.
I'm sure they are, but they split a series with the Rockies. You lost a series to the Marlins. Congrats, you won the Rickwood Fields game, but you still are an average baseball team. Pump the brakes, Greg.
Yeah, and if you're going to go on this whole like hoorah speech, I wouldn't bring up the Marlins series, even though it was 2 walk-off losses.
I understand that.
No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that.
You're deeper than the Brewers. No, you're not. What?
I mean, to be fair, the Marlins also did win 2 out of 3 against Milwaukee. They did that at.
You had to go to extras in 3 straight games against the worst team in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I mean.
You had to go to extra innings for 3 straight games against the worst team in baseball.
Yeah, Miami won 3-2 in 10 innings against the Brewers. Then the Brewers won 7-5. Then the next night, the Marlins won 1-0.
You had to go.
Now, this was a month ago, so I'm really trying to grasp at straws here.
That might have been when Yelich was hurt.
There are very few things that you can look at right now and say to yourself, that's a sign that the Cardinals are better than the Brewers. There's almost nothing. Now, I continue to say, I do not believe in the Brewers rotation. I do not believe in them at all. And yet, they just keep winning. Like, at a certain point in time, I have to look down and look at the record, look at the run differential, look at the production, and say, they're better than you, man. Like, they're a better team. I don't know how they're getting away with this, but they are. They don't have either of their two best starters. Like, the entire formula for how the Brewers existed over the last 5 seasons has just dissipated overnight from last year to this year. And they're still better than you with all of these random dudes, some homegrown, some from the outside that they've put together in this mishmash team. They're good. They're a really good team. They are well run. They have passed you up in the in terms of the NL Central teams that are the most well run. That is the Brewers. They're number 1 with a bullet. I can't say anything otherwise. So I don't think that the Cardinals are winning this division. Can they make it interesting? Maybe. But I'm not there just yet.
Look, negative Ferrario is getting yelled at right now because of that rant. If we want to talk about how they can push for the top wild card spot,
sure,
I'll listen.
I think the Brewers are better than the Braves. I'll say
agree.
that.
Yeah, but don't sell me on this team.
Sounds crazy. I could not believe if you had told me this would be my take on June 21st and you had said that on April 21st. I'd be like, no, that's ridiculous.
You
But here we are.
can't sell me on this team catching the Milwaukee Brewers because you've won once against the Milwaukee Brewers and you're 6.5 games back and your run differential is 103 difference right now. I'm not negative. I just am not going to be sold a bad product. Don't tell me that you can be the NL Central crown because you're about to go on a run. You just woke up from hibernation. You just split the series against the Rockies.
Now, to be fair, you are negative. Like what you just said there. You're not saying.
So is the Cardinals' run differential.
I mean, a little more positivity would be good.
That was well played.
I hate both of you guys. I hate both of you guys.
That was well played by Alex. I think we need to give it the respect that comment deserved. However, we do need to talk about the other thing that Greg Gamesinger had to say earlier today, Alex. Another zig while everybody else is zagging.
This one got me
Do the
too.
Cardinals need a starter? No. They need more bullpen arms.
Another legit bullpen arm is essential for this Cardinal team right now. I think everyone wants to point to the rotation. Every year we have this conversation and people are like, oh man, they need another starter. They need another starter. Everyone needs another starter. As Adam Wainwright said last night, he had a great tape on Andre Palante, who's 25 years old and figuring it out. And Adam's been with him since he broke in, and now he's a true competitor on the mound. Adam thinks he's the 5. He should be the number 5 starter going forward. Everyone's healthy. Just invest in this kid. He loves the funky, herky-jerky mechanics over the top of Palante. I like Adam Wainwright's baseball IQ, and if he says he's the perfect fit at number 5, I'm going to agree with him. I think it's a bullpen piece, Brooke. I think another major weapon out of a bullpen is what the Cardinals will be shopping for.
I'm going to give a texter credit when we were talking about this a little earlier about trading for a number 2. And the texter said you can trade for a number 2, but that number 2 makes the team batting average still 237 on the season. So I don't think a bullpen arm or a number 2 really makes that much of a difference. Like, yes, it makes you better, but your offense still needs to do something.
Yeah, I mean, eventually it just becomes just get better. You know, I can't fix everything overnight.
The offense can't be fixed externally. Yeah. You can fix the pitching externally. And to be fair to Greg Amsinger there, I think they need both. I think they need another starter, and they probably need another legit bullpen arm to come in. They're going to have to shorten games when they get to October. If they acquire a 2, Kikuchi, Fetty, Severino. If they acquire one of those 3 guys,
let's just say mid-rotation starter now, because I think when people hear number 2, they're like, "Oh, he's not a number 2." Mid-rotation starter is what you're talking about there.
If we want to lower our words for our
saying, so that way people don't
text line that should learn better, okay.
Whoa, tone.
But
tone, man.
But I did it on purpose. I did it on purpose.
Hey, it's bad
you
when
typically don't.
It's bad when the Tone Ranger has to check you.
Either way, if you get a mid-rotation arm, your goal is going to be shorting postseason games. And I don't know if that's sustainable unless you get another legitimate top bullpen arm.
I think they need both. Like, it can't be a question of either or. It needs to be an and conversation. The Cardinals need to get a mid-rotation starter and a middle of the bullpen arm. They need both of those things if they're going to be a legitimate contender this year. And even then, they're probably not a legitimate contender for a World Series. But can that get them into the playoffs and then potentially, if you squint hard enough, give them an opportunity to beat these giants of the National League? It gives you a chance. It gives you a chance.
The best thing for you to go against the Dodgers, the Phillies, potentially Milwaukee in the playoffs is mixing and matching constantly.
Absolutely.
Your starter, even Sonny Gray, probably should not see Ohtani Freeman bats a third time.
No.
You'll be mixing and matching throughout that postseason game. Like starters will be 4, 5, and dive in the playoffs. Hey, you want a fun little stat I found? This is fun for about the depth of the Brewers and the Cardinals and how ours is apparently better. The Brewers this season, how many guys do you think they've had? I know. How many guys do you think the Brewers have had start a game on the mound this season for them?
It's got to be like
9.
I was going to go
More?
How many guys for the Brewers have gotten a start on the mound? It's more than 9.
Oh my God! Already? I was going to say 9 as well, so I'll go 11.
13.
12. They've had 12 guys get a start for them on the mound, and it looks like maybe 2 of them have been kind of opener type guys. They have a better starting pitching ERA than the St. Louis Cardinals still. Not by much, but still better. I thought that was a little fun. All right, we can go to break.
Look, the stat that gets me still, you're 1-6 against the Brewers this season.
Oh, that kind of rotation.
Cardinals have had 8 players start a game for them so far this year.
Who have been there?
Jack Thompson, Matthew Liberatore,
Thompson. I
Palante.
forgot about Thompson.
Yeah, well, understandably so.
Yeah.
But the Cardinals are deeper than the Brewers, so I know.
Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us 4 different options. We'll tell you which one's got to go here on BK and Ferrario.
Terror Hunters Near Day Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals beat the Giants yesterday at the Rickwood Field game 6-5. They are off today before resuming their 3-game set with San Francisco tomorrow afternoon. 1:15 will be first pitch. Miles Michaelis gets the start for the Cardinals. Jordan Hicks will be on the mound for San Francisco. And earlier today, the Cardinals made some roster moves as they optioned Victor Scott II down to Memphis after serving as the 27th player for last night's game. And Adam Kloffenstein has been optioned as they activated Giovanni Gallegos from the 15-day IL. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, Game 6, the Stanley Cup Final 40 between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30. This Sports Update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for a One's Gotta Go. You give us 4 different options. We'll tell you which one's got to go here on BK and Ferrario. I want to say our text line today has been fantastic.
Yeah, I know.
And I appreciate all of you.
Now.
The YouTube chat, you guys are amazing as well. YouTube.com/101ESPNSTL.
Yeah, after the show today, BK is going to drop his phone number in the graveyard just so some of the people earlier can, check in with him.
Hey, man, I just like hanging out with people.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. You like to have a good time, my bud.
Rather hang out with my people than the two of you sometimes. All right, coming up at the end of this segment, we'll give you a chance to score a pair of tickets to see Green Day, so stay tuned for that. But right now, it is time for One's Gotta Go. Let's start out with this one. Guys, recently, Dr. Pepper passed Pepsi in national popularity. For you guys, which one's got to go? Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, or root beer?
Oh, root beer goes.
Really?
I've never been a root beer guy.
I can go for
Not a root beer float?
No.
Oh, I'm not a root beer float guy, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I just like a good root beer every now and then.
I've never been a root beer kind of guy for some reason, which is odd because my grandma was a huge root beer drinker, but I didn't like it.
As a child, I threw up after having a root beer float one time, so that kind of ruined my experience.
Yeah, well, I can't do Sprite or Sierra Mist after my colonoscopy, so.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they told me to mix it with something that you like to drink. Terrible opinion from the doctor's office because now I won't drink that drink.
You guys are never going to believe this. I really don't drink soda. I can't remember the last time I had a soda, especially a dark soda. But I like Pepsi the least out of these 4.
Kind of figured that'd be the case since I see green juice a lot with you in the morning. Yeah. I would say Pepsi for me. I can handle. I like a root beer every now and then. Like if you're on a long trip, Jack and Coke is great. Dr. Pepper's probably my favorite, but I've just never been a Pepsi guy.
Same.
Yeah, Coke's the number 1 for me. I go to that. Coca-Cola's the number. I know BK got real excited there. Sorry, buddy. Coca-Cola is the number 1 go-to for me.
All right, one's got to go.
Calm down over there, buddy.
Pizza.
He's a problem.
He is a problem. I hope people are listening right now and reach out.
It's Friday, man. I'm going to a comedy show tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. It's me and Kara having a night out for the first time in a while.
We know what night outs are, man. If you care about BK, reach out and just make sure he's okay. Just reach out via text, via
I'll
Twitter.
see you on Monday.
Reach out and find out if he's okay.
Maybe. Yeah.
First Monday we've worked together in a while, guys.
Yeah. Man, I'm going to miss the last 3.
Oh. Coming. Pizza, sliders, chicken wings, or beer. Which one's got to go, Alex?
Sliders. That's an easy one for me. Yeah, I would do pizza and wings. It's the easy combo, and then you add beer into it. What a night!
Pizza's my number 1 food.
What is
pizza? It's been really shooting up my my leaderboard in recent years.
Pizza and steak are probably the 2 that would be my go-tos because I love me a good steak.
There's so many different ways you can make pizza now. Like there's you got sourdough crust. I think pizza's number 1. Anyways, sliders. Sliders would be the one that's got to go for me as well.
I'm with you guys. Sweep it. Sliders. I like them, but they don't
give me the real
these
thing.
Other 3. Yeah.
Give me the burger.
Have you ever had pizza sliders? Those are.
Ooh.
Pizza sliders.
Yeah, so you like Hawaiian rolls, kind of cut them in half, put a little pizza sauce on there.
Oh, that's
like
disgusting.
pepperoni, and then just a little bit of like mozzarella cheese.
Look,
Dude,
man,
it is good.
Pizza doesn't go on anything other than crust.
And then you kind of put a little Italian seasoning on top of the Hawaiian buns when you put it in the oven. Dude, it's good.
That doesn't sound good to me.
T-Bone shops on a budget.
It's not good. It's not good leftover. Like leftovers are not good
It's
because
not
it gets
good
kind of soggy.
It's not good fresh either.
The Lunchable pizzas.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? I lived off of those.
I thought they were trash.
Those were delicious.
Yum.
And I always did them
Absolutely
cold, too.
disgusting.
Never warmed them up because people would put them in the microwave, never warmed them up. Always cold.
Because I've got a job now. I've upgraded from that to pizza rolls.
Yeah.
You know?
The trash
I think
lunch.
pizza rolls are okay.
Yeah.
No,
they're
see,
good.
I hate those. Burns the roof of your mouth.
Yeah, I know. Frank Caliendo thing.
Yeah. But, no, I didn't steal jokes. It just literally burns the roof. It's why I don't eat Captain Crunch cereal.
What?
It destroys the roof of your mouth.
Yeah.
Just you're bleeding in your cereal.
Yeah, it's true.
Try it,
He's
man.
not lying.
Try
What's
it,
your
man.
go-to cereal?
Dude, I'm big on Raisin Nut Bran these days. Dude,
you get on me.
No, but it's about
Mr. Raisin Bran
It's about
boy.
the fiber. And look, for a minute, somebody who's got issues with his bodily fluids needs the fiber.
I don't hardly eat cereal. Like, my number one is probably Cheerios. But
Oh God, you are such an old person.
Yeah, I know. I never eat cereal though.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and you guys are over
Fruity
here.
Pebbles is the goat.
Okay.
It's the goat. Although it does.
Fruit Loops is good.
If you
I
eat
use my
Fruity
oat milk
Pebbles,
in there.
that's disgusting. If you eat Fruity Pebbles, you clean the bowl afterwards. Don't let it sit in the sink. Do yourself a favor because that turns into cement.
All right. One's got to go co-ed recreational edition. Softball, kickball, sand volleyball, or ultimate frisbee.
Softball.
Ultimate Frisbee's really fun.
Can't play softball.
My number one thing that I was about to say is I guarantee you Tanner likes ultimate frisbee.
Oh, it is a blast.
Guaranteed.
The reason-
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Have you
I'm
ever
just-
played it though?
The reason
Yeah,
we
it's
played
fun.
a lot, the reason I played a lot was so my mom's a elementary school teacher. So when I was younger, I'd have to go like to her classroom and wait for 2 hours while she did all her stuff after work. Whole bunch of me and buddies when we were younger, we'd go to the gym all the time and they wouldn't leave the basketballs out. So we'd bring like a frisbee and we'd play ultimate frisbee forever. It was fantastic.
Comment on the YouTube page. What's your favorite cereal, Tanner? I like grape nuts.
Don't be a hater.
What are those? The corn pops? Is that?
Oh yeah, the corn pops. Those are good too.
Oh, those are
I'd say
disgusting.
sand volleyball. I'd get rid of that one. I don't
dude,
enjoy,
that's fun. Co-ed.
I don't enjoy playing volleyball. I don't know what it is.
Co-ed softball never works out
Do people
because.
still eat cereal?
Oh my
No.
God, yes. I eat it all the time.
Really?
Granted, I'm not gonna lie. I did have a moment the other day when I was at the grocery store where I went down that aisle by accident, and I almost for a moment bought oatmeal.
I'm always wondering when I go to the grocery store and I see like an entire aisle of just cereal.
You're going,
just an
"Man."
entire like who's buying this?
Oh man, I love cereal still. I am like a kid at heart still. I still get it, man. It's
For
still
whatever
great.
reason, like since I have my coffee in the morning, I don't want something that with breakfast has like milk in it, sitting in milk. You know, I don't know what it is. It's just something I don't
drink
want.
black coffee, so the milk didn't really.
Here's
Well,
the
I
thing.
do too, but I don't want like two different types of liquids. You know? Yeah.
Okay,
Way to
we're on the
explain
same
yourself
page
with
there.
that one.
All right, for me, I would say
It's co-ed softball.
kickball's got to go.
Oh, I love kickball.
When was the last time you played kickball?
Oh, dude, I played it a few years ago. We put a team together and we got shellacked. I suck at kickball.
I don't remember the last time I played, but it's fun.
Yeah,
So
like
co-ed
kickball, but,
softball always turns into somebody getting yelled at because they didn't make a catch. At least the other ones you can have fun with. Co-ed softball turns way too competitive and typically somebody's crying.
I would yell at PK when he drops the kickball.
Yeah,
be
but
the
it's a
same
lot more,
thing.
that's a lot more understandable when you drop the ball in kickball.
No, it's like
Yeah, but that
bigger
thing.
than catching it like a football.
Yeah, but that thing is bouncy.
So?
You ever had a bounce? What, man?
Ready for the weekend. All right. We've
go
got
play
to go
kickball?
drugs, candy, soda, or alcohol. Candy's
Drugs, 'cause
obviously
I'm a
the
good
answer.
person.
Yeah, drugs because I'm a straight edge guy.
Coming up next, that's not
TBone
true.
is gonna
BK
get the
Ferrario
one.
Rewind here on 101 ESPN. Oh, wait, before we do that, though, I've got your chance to score a pair of tickets to see Green Day and Rancid.
I can't wait for the answer on this one. Go ahead, BK.
Omaha!
I should have just cued the break
On
right
August
there.
15th at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. Right now, if you were texter
can
number
tell us.
101. You know what? No. Today we're taking texter number 24. Texter number 24 at 314-399-9646. If you can tell us what the 100-year-old woman, what she went back to do. We talked about this during the junk drawer and then went on to other conversations.
That's
but
the question you're
100-year-old
going with?
woman, what did she go back to do? What did she accomplish? If you have the correct answer to that in your texter number 24 today, you are getting the pair of tickets to see Green Day. The Rewind is next. Hey, if you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
I'd say it's been a fun show. I don't know if it's been a good one, but it's been fun. I've enjoyed it.
I had a lot of fun at the 1245 segment when we learned something new about BK today.
Absolutely. So you can go check that out on the podcast page.
Go do yourself a favor.
Today. Congratulations to Brandon, who won the tickets to see Green Day.
You won the tickets yourself?
No, he spells it differently. He spells it Brandan.
Brandon. I actually prefer that. You should try that.
I just go by BK. All right, so the Cardinals end up getting the win yesterday in one of the coolest events that I've seen Major League Baseball put on.
Nice.
Alex, when you think back on that 20, 30, 40 years from now, what's going to be your lasting memory of what happened yesterday at Rickwood Field with the Cardinals participating in that event?
I think it's going to be the stories that were told that day because, like, again, I said yesterday, I've never been to the Negro League Museum, and it's a spot that I keep telling my wife I really want to go to, and especially after last night, it kind of amplified that even more. But the stories we heard from start to finish, I think, is going to be something that sticks for me. And I know we played the audio earlier, and do yourself a favor and listen to it. But, man, the Reggie Jackson, what he had said during that broadcast, I feel like painted the perfect picture of why baseball continues to celebrate the Negro Leagues and the players that were a part of it. So as much as, you know, the Field of Dreams games, I'm going to remember because of the game and because of that walk-off home run and how incredible it was. This one, I'm not going to remember the game. I'm going to remember the broadcast and all of the stories that we heard from start to finish.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm not sure so much about what happened in the game for me as much as it is hearing the stories and remembering the celebration of the Negro Leagues and getting them what they deserve is being remembered. You know, I think that's what's going to be remembered for me and how well the broadcast was put together for that purpose.
It'll be twofold for me. One, Reggie Jackson pregame. That'll be the number one thing that I remember. And then secondarily to that, it'll be the pregame ceremony with John Batiste singing and performing, the Negro Leagues players walking out alongside the current major leaguers for San Francisco and St. Louis, seeing the oldest living Negro Leagues player walk out with Willie McGee on his side, I thought was a really cool thing. And then seeing Willie Mays' son go out there and speak right before the game
with
as well,
Griffey and Bonds walking out, I thought was really cool.
Saying, hey, be loud right now because Willie, my father, can hear you. All of that from start to finish, the pregame ceremony, and then the flyover as well. The pregame ceremony, I think, will be the thing that forever will be stuck in my memory bank from that game because we know how this works, right? Like today, we remember all of it. We remember the black and white TV. The half inning that they did that way, the 1950 style broadcast. We remember the stories that you heard from yesterday. Some of the actual game moments, like the Adam Kloffenstein making his debut, former Alabama native Brendan Donovan becoming the first major league player to hit a home run in Alabama. Like those are all things that we remember today and we'll talk about. A lot of it will fade into the backdrop as we get further and further away from that game. That pregame ceremony is something that I think remember forever. It was that kind of impactful. So good on Major League Baseball for putting on an unbelievable display yesterday. And now the Cardinals are back at it. Like they're right back into their schedule starting tomorrow against the San Francisco Giants. You got Michaelis on the mound tomorrow. You got Sonny Gray on the mound on Sunday. Alex, it's hard to ask for sweeps, especially when they've got Hicks and Webb. These are some really difficult pitching matchups for the Cardinals. But I think you saw yesterday that San Francisco lineup is nothing to write home about. If you could get a sweep here, put a little bit of distance between yourself and San Francisco, it'd go a long way in helping you down the road. I think this is a series that you at least need to take 2 out of 3 from at this point.
It's going to be tough, especially like you mentioned with Hicks and Webb. I don't trust this team against top pitching, especially when you're talking about these two guys. It's going to be very tough. I'm with you. I think you have to follow up a Marlins series loss with a Giants series win because then you get the Braves after that. And what you can't have happen is 3 straight series losses. So this one's going to be a massive task for the Cardinals. It's good they got the day off so that they're fresh going into it. But I do not like their odds with those 2 pitchers on the other side.
These are going to be low scoring, so they're going to have to do what we talked about earlier in the show. They're going to have to manufacture runs against San Francisco, against Hicks and Webb. They're going to have to run. They're going to have to try and create some offense.
You should have your big 3 available the next couple of days, you would imagine. In theory, they should be good to go. And Ryan Fernandez at this point should be available as well. Same thing for Matthew Liberatore, I think, on Sunday. So Their pitching setup, all things considered, given what they just went through in Miami, pretty well. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. The three of us back with you on a Monday coming up next week for the first time in about a month. We will talk to you guys then. Enjoy your weekend. The Fast Lane coming up next here on 101 ESPN.